And we're live. Welcome to an incredible event. I mean, I'm saying this in advance, but I'm sure it's going to be amazing. We have here the three topmost marriage and dating experts in the frum world. I said this, don't hold anyone else accountable. My name is Nesanel Gantz. We have Dr. David Lieberman, Rabbi Bentzion Shafier, and Rabbi Reuven Epstein. This is a special Yad Lachem event that we put together to focus on both dating and marriage tips. They're kind of connected. And the reason why we arranged this whole thing, it's partially because of our Two Buff Together project, but throughout the year, Yad Lachem always says tefillas throughout the year, and people send their names. And why do we do that? What's the connection? So quick background. Yad Lachem helps rescue Jewish women and children that are trapped in Arab villages. It's great work, Pidyon Shvuyim, that's what we do. And a lot of these women, Baruch Hashem, we have to get them married, and we do. So throughout the years, we arranged tefillas to take place in Mekayim Segdation. People sent their names as well. So it kind of segued that people send their names for davening to Yad Lachem throughout the year. We view it as a schus that the women and children that we rescue should find their shidduch. So somehow, Baruch Hashem, we became connected with marriage, and the whole year round, people are sending us for marriage advice, marriage tips, and davening for shidduchim. So we obviously take care of the spiritual aspect, which is the tefillah, and now we're taking care of the shtalis aspect, which is real life advice, dating and marriage advice from the three biggest experts. And I'm so excited that you guys are here. It's like mamash schus. Like 4 days ago, we had this idea. I was speaking to Reuven. I'm like, let's put this together, and in a few days, it worked out. So we're going to start with a little bit of background, yeah? And the reason for that is as follows. You know, when I write an article, I write my articles, and I always try to get somebody's background story. Why is that? Because who said you're chashuv? Like, how's your marriage doing? What makes you some expert, right?
Shouldn't you have our wives here then instead of us?
That's a good point. I got to call them up before I can't say what they said. But if you mess up, we'll use it as blackmail. But the point is, like, what made you an expert? What's your background that got to it? So we'll go the other way. Reuven, we'll start with you. We were actually classmates in yeshiva, right? I didn't know he was going to make an amazing husband in marriage advice. I actually told my wife, listen, if it wasn't a good friend of mine, we would go talk to him. So tell me your background story.
I think I rubbed off on you all those years.
So what's your background story? How did you get to this whole thing of marriage? Like, run through quickly, I guess, post-high school to where you are today.
I'm a Talmud of Rabbi Yisrael Berkowitz, the Jerusalem Kollel, and I spent many years, about 5 years in Eretz Yisrael, doing shimush with Rabbi Yisrael Kalafan, who is the expert in Shalom Bayis. So between like those two worlds, I believe, and I always believe, that really everything in life is really a system. So our bodies are a system, the economy is a system, the weather is a system. So marriage really is also a system. And when I got married, coming from the yeshiva world, where you don't have a lot of exposure really at all to girls and women and relationships, and just starting to hear just ideas of like, ruach, nefesh, neshama, like concepts that like didn't really speak to me. Like, what does it mean tachlis for my life? Like, how am I supposed to be a happy husband? Like, why is everyone struggling and I'm going to be any different? And just telling people things like, like, all you need is shalom and then you'll be happy. And what does that mean? Everybody wants to be happy. So why am I going to be any different? So I just set out for my own life to study what is the system of marriage. I was very fortunate to have incredible rebbeim who gave over to me what I consider to be a very thorough system of marriage. And then from there, people started coming. I teach chasanim, I counsel couples, I do dating coaching, which was, I think it's a new term, dating coaching. Back then it wasn't like such a thing, but people come to me for dating advice, or people who are engaged and they say like, should we go through with this wedding? Whatever the level of, issues that might be, on the table. And I've been doing this now for close to about 15 years.
But you also have a side career, right?
I'm also an accountant, and I do tax accounting and forensic accounting as well.
How do you balance the two of them?
So during the day is basically my parnasa side of things, and then at night is the Klal Yisrael side of things. And I always say there's two types of people in the world. There's the people who talk to me about their marriage, and people who talk to me about my marriage. So I guess you're the second type of person asking me about my marriage. So on my side of things, my wife has always been on this journey with me. So she teaches college, she works in my accounting firm. And we have a very nice balance in terms of, her doing what she does at night and me doing what I do at night. She
works in your accounting firm?
She works in the accounting firm.
I worked with my wife for 1 year, and I always say, Baruch Hashem was still married, then she went her separate ways. No, she actually went to college. Not that she left because of that.
Don't try it at home. It's not for everybody.
I remember one time I interviewed someone, and he works with his wife. I said, how do you do that? He goes, can we go off the record? He's like, yeah, sure. He said, we're getting divorced in 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm not going to ask that question.
Off the record, my wife has a business. I started a second business next to hers. 3 of my kids are involved. My wife's involved. I'm involved. I spend 5 hours a week, but it's a family business.
What business?
We internet business, internet-based, but it does well, Chaz Hashem, and we get along.
Okay, so
5 family members in a business, and we get along.
So I find that in that regard, it either works or it doesn't. It's not like, oh, we make it work. It's either it works or
You
it's
cut that
fireworks.
from the record. That's not going on.
Of course it's going on. Okay, start from the back. So Rabbi Shafier,
Yes.
you're known as the Shmooze, right?
Yes.
Which I have to say, by the way, was the most biggest genius marketing event for a shir in history. Maybe Killer Belly Stefanski. The fact that you had this idea, you're giving a shir, and it's the Shmooze. To this day, I still hold it's the most amazing marketing thing ever. Getting people to learn Torah that way, to your credit, it's amazing. So what's your background story? What do you do for Panosa? How did you get into the whole marriage idea? Because you wrote books, the 10 really dumb mistakes that smart couples make, and you wrote a lot of shalom, you give a lot of shiurim and shalom bayis.
Right. So I was a high school rebbe for about 15 years, Chavetz Chaim Yeshiva, and Rabbi Lieberman Yeshiva Zatzal asked me to start a program for the working guy. These were guys who had been in yeshiva, some were still holding and learning, some weren't, but Sada Shavish Shabim, they were all in the workforce. Hashem felt there was nothing for them, no organizations, they didn't really belong to shul, so he asked me to start an organization. So the Shmooze really grew out from that. The Shmooze was, I would go, once a week, it was in Brooklyn one day a week, Monsey, and then Queens, and I would go from location to location, I would say the Shmooze, and then we built programs around that, morning kollels, night kollels, various things. It was a very beautiful sort of organization. Now, my entree into this sugya called marriage is a very interesting one. Because I gave the Shmooze, the guys looked at me as their das Torah. They came to me with questions, life issues, and initially I felt well equipped to handle them, basic issues. And the Chaver started getting married, and all of a sudden the questions became a lot more complex and a lot deeper, and I found myself incapable of answering. Meaning, the couple comes to you with a problem. Listen, I've been married then about 15 years. Baruch Hashem, we're happily married, but to guide someone else to figure out what their issue is, what the problem is. Anyway, the first number of couples that came to me, when I realized I didn't have the equipment, I would take them to marriage counselors, marriage therapists.
You would take them to...
Yeah. And now we lost a good number of them, and I realized something, that not only had their marriage failed, but I failed, because I was their Rebbe. I was supposed to have answers, and I didn't. So I began a study. I began a journey. I read as much as I could. I read just about every popular secular marriage book. I read as many chazals as I could, as many svarim as I could. And I spent the next maybe 20 years codifying in my mind what I felt were the essentials, so like what Rabbi MC did. I also, since that time, I've dealt with hundreds and hundreds of couples, close to 1,000 by now. And I'll be honest with you, I know for sure that much of the eights that I gave in the beginning wasn't all brilliant, because some things worked and some things don't. But if you do this long enough and put enough time, enough effort, and make enough mistakes and learn from them, you realize what works and what doesn't. So then I sort of developed a system, what I consider the basics of marriage. That really, the book, The 10 Really Dumb Mistakes, kind of codifies what those big mistakes are. And that's my introduction. And Baruch Hashem, I'm still happily married, 38 years in. My wife still loves me. I love her. We're still good, despite doing this.
That's amazing. Dr. Lieberman, what's your
That's the first thing I want to say is, they say you can't get everything you want in a spouse. My wife is the exception. She got everything she wanted.
Very good.
She got everything to
Thank you.
That's going to be cut from the tape.
Yeah, there we go.
That is the best way to start off, yeah.
So I've always had an amazing fascination with human nature. I went into psychology for that reason, got a doctorate. I worked for law enforcement, tactics of interview, interrogation, just understanding people. As you know, I've written a couple of books. I wrote books on influence, on lie detection, reading people.
People don't know that in the front world, that you wrote a lot of these books that
Yeah. I meet them sometimes, and they're like, wait a minute. And they'll hold up the book, old and new, and they'll go, wow. It's like, Clark Kent and Superman, David and David. Apparently it didn't really throw them too much. And, so I started teaching also communications at university, and it's fascinating with just understanding people. And I started speaking more and more and more in both worlds, in our world and non-from world, non-Jewish world. And I found that when it came to relationships, whether it's chinuch, whether it's shalom bayis, whether it's dating, people were doing the same things time and again that were just messing them up. And I thought, if I was able to just offer some insights to help them navigate that space, they could live amazingly, more productive lives. And that's why I went into it. You get a lot more bang for your buck with relationships, because self-help, okay, I want to work on myself, lifelong journey. Marriage also. But there are sometimes very small things you can do in a marriage or even in dating that can make a very profound difference in how things turn out.
Right, so I think what the great thing of to have you guys here is not just you guys giving advice on basically the Kosegi's boast through this, right? Oh, I think this. You have the gift of experience, right? When you're dealing with thousands of couples collectively here, several thousand people, couples that you've seen. So I'm going to rephrase my first question. Maybe you don't have the best marriages. Hopefully you do, but it doesn't mean anything. The fact that you see what works in other people, right? That gives a great insight how you got other people, for sure.
I do have to say on that though that if somebody doesn't know how to do it themselves,
No, I'm not
it's
saying
not
that.
just
I'm
it's
not
not just an
saying-
intellectual
I agree with
pursuit,
you. No, I
right?
agree with you.
There's depths of emotion and connection that have to be experienced.
No, for sure. I do agree with you that again, I'm assuming if you said something to somebody and they saw, hey, you're full of it, it wouldn't really work. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it would work. So let's start. Natalie, we'll start with you. Part of this is being viewed on the Two Buff Together program, which is Baruch Hashem helped thousands of people, and a lot of people are single. They're watching when they're single. So my first question is this: how important is it for singles to hear marriage advice, right? Because there's gonna be a lot of marriage advice here, or should they focus only on dating advice? Like, what would you say to that question?
If you're asking me, of course they need to know about marriage. First off, Mitzvah Shem, they're going to need those skills, and the time to learn them isn't, the time to build a parachute.
You just wrote a book of B'tachan, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
Touche. But, as the saying goes, the time to build a parachute isn't when you're jumping out of the plane. So, preparation is valuable. Plus, there are certainly so much in terms of communication, empathy, validation, connection that is applicable in marriage that, obviously you're going to be using in real time in dating. Plus, the person who you're dating, you will eventually marry one of them, in which case it would make sense to, begin to apply and practice those same tools in real life to see how this person is able to respond and navigate rather than just sort of pick up a whole new system of communication.
I hear that. Shafier, what would you say to that?
So I would say, to me, one of the biggest reasons why someone single should learn about marriage is because people come into dating with these, what I call chalamos. I need this, I need that, I need this. And when they get married, they suddenly discover marriage is a whole different set of circumstances, needs, requirements. And suddenly they look back and say, oh, I wish I knew that then because my selection criteria would have been very, very different. So I think it's imperative. First of all, I agree with Dr. Lieberman. It's very important because you don't learn on the way down to the chuppah how to be married. It's too late then. But again, even more than that, it gives you a much better understanding of what you're looking for, what you need, so that you're able to actually make a good decision.
I would say I agree 100%. Obviously, that
that was the first and last time we're agreeing today.
No, yeah, that the education piece is of course important. I would just add a piece over here, which is that I think that a lot of people they date wrong, meaning that they date. What that means is that they hang out with another person, they spend time with another person. But to me, real dating means that you're utilizing the time that you have together to explore something that has some sort of depth. So I would encourage people when they're getting a little further on in their dating process to actually start discussing, like, what are your expectations of me during marriage? How do you visualize working through issues and talking through maybe hypothetical cases? Like, what if we couldn't agree on X, Y, and Z? What would we do about that? How do you envision spending money? What if we had a lot of money? Would we build that kind of house or this kind of house?
So there's all these rules, right? You don't talk about the first 2 dates, it gets too serious, and real nervous, right? All these different things.
I don't know if there's like a whole rule book of unwritten rules that exists somewhere out there. I don't know at what point you have to discuss it, but assuming you're talking 10 dates, let's say that's a normal couple's, date today, 10 dates maybe. So like 6, 7, or 8.
So first, I once met a guy from YU, and he dated for 3 months, and he heard I dated for a month. He's like, "You dated so little?" I said, "You don't tell this Aaron, they go at once, right?" The rule I want to say, he goes, "Yeah, I want to a rule like this." He says, "It doesn't matter if you date 1 time, 1 month, 3 months, or 3 years. After you're married, it's a different story anyways."
Yeah, for sure. So at whatever point you consider it getting quote unquote serious, I think a couple should say to each other, now let's discuss what it means to raise children. What does it mean to set up a home? Like the more serious conversations at that point, because you're now laying the groundwork for what your future relationship will be.
Do you mean general the concept that people don't date for marriage? They don't date with that thing in mind? Or
I think people date in the back of their mind to get married. I don't think people date with the idea that I'm planning out the next 100 years of my life. So I don't think it's to that level of consciousness.
But you think it should be?
It should be, for sure. And if you do, then you have a much higher chance of actually getting on the same page and hearing what people's expectations are. You know what I mean? If a woman has expectation to lead a certain type of life, career, whatever it might be, as opposed to stay-at-home mother, that's going to be 2 different pictures completely.
I hear that. Rabbi Shafier, let's have the next question is kind of a similar question. When people are dating, they often say they put on their best foot forward, right? Like I just said the joke that when you get married, it's different, but it's not uncommon, right? People do act a certain way when they're dating. They'll dress to the nines. They'll be all perfect. They'll be mentioned when they're eating. And all these different things that when they're married, either because they're more relaxed or maybe they were putting on a little bit of a fake persona. So the question is, how would you what advice would you give to people when they're dating in this regard? And it's a double-edged question. The person who's dating that person, should you act a certain way when you're dating? Should you act better? I always say, don't be yourself. Yeah, that's my thing. But what about the red flags for, to watch somebody else?
It's interesting you say that, because I would say the very first thing I tell any young man or young woman going out is you should be yourself 100% as much as you can, because what you're looking for is this a connection? Is this a match? If you act as much as you can yourself and she acts the same and you're trying to understand each other, you're going to see in not a long time whether there's a connection, whether there's a commonality, is there something that you guys have in common? So the more you put on a persona, the more you put on a show, you may find that this person falls to that persona. That doesn't mean she's the right one for you.
Yeah, but that's a hard thing to do, right? You're telling a guy, listen, usually your shirt's untucked, so you're going to keep your shirt untucked. I mean, obviously, a person can't consciously, lower his guard, so to speak, before he's dating or she's dating.
Maybe I misspoke. I mean to say that if you're a schlum, act like a schlum. But don't put on any shows. Be yourself. Your goal in the date should be one thing. I'd like to get to understand this person. I'd like to meet them. I'd like to see who you are. And I tell people also, no questions on the date. Meaning, in your own mind, don't ask any questions. Your only question is, who is this person? Do I enjoy a company? When you're done the date, that's when you start probing and taking your own temperature. Did I enjoy a company? Did it feel proper? Did it feel, it just sort of felt right? It just felt, or it didn't. You see, there are two systems. I have for my Rebbe a Masorah. We have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. The conscious mind functions at about 1/100th of the capacity of the subconscious. Many times you'll see somebody, and Dr. Lieberman will tell me if I'm not correct, you can tell somebody the way he says it, you just feel he's lying. Now, why? Because there's a fraction of a second, about 4 microseconds between his response and his answer when he's processing, should I tell the truth or not? Your conscious mind will never pick it up, your subconscious might. So the point is, what you should do more than anything else is no agenda, nothing. I'm myself. I want to get to know this person. I want to get to understand who she is. She understands me. And you act yourself as much as you can. Try to get to know the person. And when you're done, after 2 dates, 3 dates, whatever it may be, you ask yourself this series of questions. Did I enjoy her company? Does it just sort of feel right? Does it feel like there's a sort of, I can't explain. It's certainly not love, not rockets on 4th of July. It just feels right. It feels like there's a connection. It feels like something, it just feels proper. So
you can't say what Rabbi Epstein said, but we're codifying with these, in a way, the rules. First few dates, take it easy, just like let yourself go, see what you feel if you're enjoying your company or his company, and then later maybe you could do what Rabbi Epstein said, trying to probe.
I would not that I would disagree with Rabbi Epstein because I don't have his experience, but I would counsel someone never to deal with that question. The only question you ask yourself is, does it feel right? Meaning, there's what I call the paper test and the Bashar test. Paper test is before you go out. You get your background straight. Who is this person? Are there any skeletons in the closet? Anything I'm not going to see on the date? You have to do your research because that's the stuff you're not going to see on the date. On the date, assuming this person has passed the paper test, you're looking to lead the same kind of lifestyle. For instance, as you mentioned, if she only shops in Saks Fifth Avenue, he wants to learn cola for 10 years, there's not a match.
Unless the father's very rich and wants to give a lot of money.
Maybe, but assuming that's not the case, first thing you do on paper, are we looking for about the same lifestyle? Within broad brushstrokes. Number 2, are there any skeletons in the closet? Any psychological, emotional issues that I'm not going to see? You really have to research. You have to do the research well, or parents do the research. People there. Once the paper test is done, then you take the Bashar test. The Bashar test is very intuitive, very instinctive. It's just a commonality, a sense of it feels right. Hashem gives each person a daya and a knowledge who the right person is. There's a certain
So you don't think at any point you should be asking serious questions? Of course you should.
What serious questions to understand who this person is? Absolutely.
Understanding if you're compatible, understand where you see the future, like Rabbi Epstein said.
I believe most 22-year-olds have no understanding what they're going to be like at 42, at 52, and certainly not at 62. And I think it wouldn't be conjecture, it would be foolishness.
We are so close, by the way, that if we disagree, it's just like, just the other side of each other's minds.
They just met, by the way.
There's a lot of truth to what Rabbi Shafier, of course, is saying, but I want to say that, yes, it's true, people change over the next 20, 30, 100 years, right? But to me, I think one of the biggest dating mistakes that people make is that they just simply date. And if you want to know for a fact that, and of course it's all menashemayim and bitachon and emuna and shafa and bracha, and I'm not making light of any of that, but I'm just saying from a hishtadlus perspective, if a person goes out with somebody and they date emotionally. It doesn't mean you're going to fall in love or rockets on the 4th of July, but you date emotionally, meaning you have a conversation about something where you reveal something about yourself, or the other person shares something and you go, wow, or you see a person's reaction. You date emotionally on the emotional spectrum, then usually that will create an emotional connection. And to me, of course, people change over the next 100 years, but if you change together, if you grow together, if your journey goes together, so then if your starting point is strong, then you can grow strong. If your starting point is theoretical or very abstract, so then, as they say in Yiddish, like mehechatesi, like who says that when you face a challenge together, you're going to be on the same page, or the person's reaction is going to be what you would expect or hope for them to react. So to me, when a couple dates emotionally, they don't have to burst out crying on a date and start sharing about, their inner trauma. That's not what I'm talking about. But when they share a story or about a relationship, and you could just, you feel the same feelings, you're talking the same talk in an emotional sense, which again, not the first or the second date perhaps, but at some point, that consciousness becomes regesh. It becomes
I don't
feeling.
think you disagree that
No,
at one point you can have serious
since we're so
conversation.
close that we finish each other's sentences.
Finish off the paragraph here.
Yeah, the paragraph, the rest of the book. The first question I would ask a person when they're going out is, what are you looking for? But there's only one right answer in my book, and that is the person that Hashem determined is the right one for me.
Of course.
But wait, one second. Not of course. Almost every single person, without exception, who I ask, what are you looking for, comes out with the
Start
laundry
describing
list.
the list, exactly.
The laundry list. There's only one person who got it right, my daughter. When she was about to go out, I said, what are you looking for? My besher. I said, stop, where'd you get that from? Okay, but the point is, the difference is not just small. You see, if I understand that I'm looking for the person Hashem has chosen for me, then I just use the criteria of selection. Again, according to my system, a very intuitive sense. I agree full-heartedly with Rabbi Epstein saying that the emotionality, the emotion part of it is huge, and that's the only way you're going to feel a connection. You're going to feel, but at the end of the day, what you're looking for is the right one. How do I know the right one? It's not going to be your conscious mind. It's not going to be your understanding. It's going to be just
think you disagree with
an intuitive sense. And one more step also. Anyone who says, I know what marriage is like because I have married sisters, married brothers, you're fooling yourself beyond description. So if you think you're going to be able to predict, based on my understanding, based on my knowledge of human psychology and marriage, I know what I need, you don't. And then for your engagement during the conversations, and by that making determinations whether she's the right woman for me or not, is sophistry. It's unbased. It's foolish because you don't have the basis for it.
Dr. Lieberman, let's go to you. So what do you say about the people who, let's say, I don't say put on a facade when they're dating, right? But people always say, act your best, be better. What would you say to them? Because you counsel both ends of the story, right?
Right. So certainly being authentic is necessary in order to establish a connection. If I'm just all about a facade, about an exterior, then I'm not going to be able to connect in a meaningful way. At the same time, I encourage people on the first date not to show up and tell them every therapist they've gone to, every medication they're on, and
I have to interject. I went to Reuven Miller once said it's the biggest mistakes, and I tell this to people now because I made this mistake, honestly. When I speak to, I'm not a counselor, but I speak to young guys getting engaged, I said, biggest advice was from Reuven Miller. He said, don't tell your spouse all your failures in the past. She'll figure out very soon you're not Superman. That was his line, right? So you don't have to reveal your trauma and everything. Again,
So certainly, but people will say, like, if they don't know, the whole me, that's right, they have to love me for all of me. I said, let them find out some of the good stuff before you unload on, some of the things that need to be a little bit.
Advice.
Yeah, so authenticity is necessary, and certainly as the two rabbis are speaking about, having shared values and knowing what direction you want to go in, degree of flexibility. I'm more focused on emotional health insofar as if you have two reasonably emotionally healthy people, you could pretty much get through just about anything. But if you're dealing with somebody who's not 100%, even the smallest thing is going to cause an earthquake. So it's important to have, your ducks in a row, make sure that, everyone's on the same page. End of the day is, you need people who are emotionally solvent in order for that marriage to optimize itself.
So you're the psychologist and the expert in body language. What are some of the red flags to beware when dating?
Ha, ha, ha. Okay. I mean, there's
Like 406, but let's start with like a few.
Narrow it down in terms of lying, in terms of arrogance, in terms of emotional health. What do you want to focus on?
So you mentioned emotional health. Let's talk about arrogance, emotional health, I would assume.
When you talk about emotional health, you talk about somebody who has genuine self-esteem. which anyone that knows my stuff, familiar.
Explain it. You have to explain it. It's a great thing. People don't
Fine.
know.
So more self-esteem I have, the smaller the ego. Like a seesaw. One goes up, the other goes down. As my self-esteem decreases, I love myself less, meaning genuine love, not narcissistic. Genuine love goes down, my ego now engages. The ego is the false self. The ego needs to predict, to control, it can't tolerate uncertainty, and so on. The more the ego manifests itself on the date, the less healthy this person is. That's it. There are a couple of ways you can see this in the reflection of behaviors. Number one, how he or she treats other people, particularly those they don't quote unquote have to be nice to, which is why midos is so important. I want to hear, don't think for a second that please, excuse me, thank you, or icing on the cake. They're the cake. You want to marry somebody because this goes to the core of somebody who has a sense of acknowledgement, appreciation, a karas hatov. When you serve them dinner or you come back from work, you're going to want somebody to say, thank you, please, excuse me. So if they're not doing it on their date and they're on,
best behavior,
they're, right, then even though there are maybe cultural differences and there may be different terms of maturity, these are small things, but something to pay attention to. And certainly if somebody has a disproportionate reaction to something, that is going to be an indication of lack of perspective, and ego blocks perspective. So there's a laundry list of things you could see in terms of how a big ego manifests itself. Certainly a lack of empathy. If you're telling me a story like Rabbi Epstein spoke about, and the person's just not connecting, there are people who don't connect so easily to emotional stories. We call them men, right? But there has to be some degree of interest, some degree of acknowledgement. It can't be like, are you going to finish those cheese sticks? You're looking for somebody who's able to move out of their own stuff and focus on someone else. So again, there's a laundry list of things you can do to pay attention to see how, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you said a very strong point that a red flag of midos, that you shouldn't just sweep it under the rug, right? It's not something like, he's a nice guy, but I said this. No. That's a big issue.
Another big one is by his boundaries. You want to see someone who respects your boundaries. You say no, thank you. Okay, fine. Maybe the guy's in fundraising, and we'll be, push once politely. But you shouldn't have to continue to defend your boundaries, because when you get married, guess what? You're going to say something, and you want to be married to somebody who will respect it, or at the very least, certainly then validate it, have a conversation about it, and then you move forward together. Not somebody that's going to keep on pushing past the point.
Give me an example of that issue.
This has comes up a lot, quite frankly. You tell the person you're dating that you're just not comfortable discussing something. And then, 10 minutes later, it's like, okay, so, and it's like, you know what, this is just not something I'm comfortable discussing. And they keep on, that's somebody, don't think curiosity got the better of them. Maybe yes, maybe no, but that, in my mind, is a red flag that this person is not going to have the healthiest respect for your boundaries when it comes to something maybe even more serious.
Mm-hmm. What do you say, Rabbi Shafier? Red flags in dating.
I'm going to pass.
Okay, we'll come back to you.
Okay,
I'm going to come back to you.
I have two things that just come to mind as I'm listening to Dr. Lieberman. By the way, just going back, you wrote a book, David Lieberman and David Lieberman. People are like, really? That's my takeaway from today.
Either from that or when. Right?
It's amazing. Two things that come to mind. Number one is, I would say that most people who struggle in marriages, it's not necessarily a red flag that could have been picked up before. And I would say, this is the way I would quantify this, that we talk about midos, and we think everyone has either good midos, not good midos, or somewhere on the spectrum of midos. A bunch of years ago, a few girls asked me, they said, could you define what it means to have good midos? So, I think the off-the-cuff answer is they're nice, they're sweet. So I started doing some research, and there's a sefer called Cheshbon HaNefesh, and Rabbi Yisrael Salanter used to quote from the sefer, and he over there, he breaks down a person's midos into 13 midos. Just like Hashem has 13 midos, we have 13 midos. And I gave a series, it's on Torah Anytime, called Journey of Midos. And it was very fascinating because when it comes to any midah, let's take money, you can have opposite sides of the spectrum that are both in the same quote-unquote midah that are both considered good or healthy, but they're just very, very, very different from the other. So let's say when it comes to money, money is a midah, how you relate to money, how you spend money. So a person can live a very ostentatious lifestyle, they're very benevolent, they give to people, they host people. You would say that that's objectively good or as far as Hashem is concerned, like they're doing everything right. You could have somebody on the other side of the spectrum that they're much more of a spendthrift. They don't give out their money so much. They're very, fiscally conservative. And that would also be nice. They live in a simple house, even though they have a ton of money. And both of those things are good. The issue is if they get married to each other, those two people are going to have two totally different outlooks on life. And they're both good. They both don't have an issue in terms of the midah of money. So in a lot of things in life, it's like that, right? The person who's very confident and very outgoing is one side of a spectrum. Somebody who's introverted and who's looking down at his own shoes, that's also somebody who you might say is considered good. But if those two people are married to each other, that's where you may have a lot of conflict. So what I find with a lot of couples, it's not that they miss some flag and they have to diagnose the person as some sort of narcissist or they're crazy or no, not necessarily. Most people who get divorced or are in marriages that are struggling, I wouldn't categorically say that they fall onto one of the diagnoses. It's a lot of times there's a couple that they're just not aligned with each other. They're very misaligned with each other, but they're both great, wonderful people. It could also
actually be that those differences is what attracted them to begin with, right?
It very well could be, yeah.
Because, he has this, I would love that he's confident, or she has this, I love that about her, and that often causes a conflict. They say opposites attract, but sometimes it's actually an issue, right?
And being able to work with someone who's very different than you, and of course men and women are always inherently different, but somebody who even within the midah that you're discovering. So that's just the first thing that I would say.
Marriage,
so when it comes to flags, to me the question is of course you want to know flags, but the bigger question is this shidduch a shidduch? Meaning, can you work with this person? You asked me about my life. My wife and I could not be any different. Like if you were describing two people who were opposites, we are very opposite. And part of the reason we got engaged on our third date was because on the first date,
but he just said this now. You didn't say.
Yeah, we looked at each other and we said, "Wow, look, what is this? Like, you are so different than me. What am I looking at over here?" And until today, we say that to each other. We're like, what is this? Oh, this is so interesting. My wife is very spontaneous, and let's go to Florida today, right now, in 10 minutes, And she's very like drop of the hat, that kind of thing. Everything is good and it's wonderful. And I'm like the opposite. I'm structure, I'm seder. I need everything to be in the right time, in the right place. So because we are so open about it,
you understood.
We understood it exactly
From
the beginning, we understood it, and we said we are going to go through this journey, and it's going to be a very cool journey where we're going to balance each other out. And because of that, there's a lot of respect when the other one says something that we're like, interesting. Oh, that's very interesting, and it creates a balance.
Reuven, that's an unhealthy relationship. Obviously, the issue is when people have the exact opposite and they're just fighting with it.
All I'm saying is that many couples, they are inherently good people. They just have two sides of a spectrum, which is both good. They're both good. But you have to be able to work with a person. And the question I would say people should ask is not, is there a red flag? The question is this a shidduch? When you're asking about somebody, if you ask, do they have good midos? Everyone's going to tell you yes. If you can say, is this a shidduch? And you can describe the type of person that you're looking for, and the person starts telling you things, then your ears will be more open to hearing things that you otherwise wouldn't have heard. Because most people, if you call them up and say, "Hi, is there any flags that I should know about?" they're not going to say yes. And the one more thing I just want to add is that research is so important, and we live in a day and age where research is just, it's either swept under the rug or it's not done, or people will call and they'll just get some shidduch answer like, "Oh, they're nice people? Oh yeah, they're nice people." And then they'll hang up and they'll be like, "I did some research."
You don't think some people do too much research before they go out?
People do too much research, how they're cleaning off their tables, if they're stacking or they're whatever. That's ridiculous. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about real research. If a shidduch is a shidduch. And I would encourage people, before you go on a first date with somebody, you should hear from somebody, or at least in your mind, you should think the words, "This sounds like a good shidduch." Meaning, for my child, this sounds like a good shidduch. Or I've done some questions, and I think this makes sense. Not just they sound like nice people from...
So I'm not this big expert. What I discovered is when, because I used to do research for my wife's siblings, my share would ask me to call the questions. I think that the top two questions I discovered that can help you discover about somebody is, number one, is there anything that stands out, like negative, right? And some they'll say, "Oh yeah, he's sometimes angry." They'll say that. And the second thing that I found, they said, if it was Matim, would you let him marry your daughter?
Right?
And I've had a chashiv rav give a whole praise about a guy, and then I asked him this question, like, "Nope." I said, "What if they're matching?" "Nope." I'm like, "So why do you say it?" He goes, "Because you didn't ask me that question, right?" So is it a shidduch? So Shafier, you skipped over this question.
So I have a little bit of a Yetzer Hara. When Shmooze in Queens, there was a divorce lawyer who used to attend regularly. And one day my Yetzer Hara flashed, and I went over to him before the Shmooze. I said, "So tell me, how do you like your job?" Needless to say, I'm not a big fan of divorce lawyers. So he said something fascinating. He said, I get people at the worst moments of their life. People make a big mistake. When you see a couple that are divorcing, they assume, oh, obviously he's a narcissist. Clearly she's controlling. There's no question in that relationship now they're both dysfunctional. But that doesn't mean that's who they are, and it doesn't mean that was at all the problem. The problem is the relationship, the problem is the getting along, the problem is the marriage. And I find the biggest problem in marriage is not knowing gender differences, not knowing relationship needs, not knowing what I'm supposed to compromise on, what I'm supposed to stand on, not understanding the basic mechanics of being married. So, saying red flags, I can't agree more with Rabbi Epstein because we also were the same, opposite sides of the same coin. But I'm going to comment after about that for a minute. It's so interesting. Rabbi Epstein's one of the most emotional guys I've ever seen. I'm one of the most emotionally dead guys I've ever seen. It's such an interesting...
They're both my patients, by the way.
and that's why it's so interesting. I'm listening to...
Doctor, how do we work through this?
we had a Zoom the other day, right? So I was joking. I'm like, listen, I told my wife, listen, we don't have to go to marriage counseling. I get the 3 guys in the room. Let's figure it all out.
But in any case, so I think a lot of times people assume red flags, bad me, this way me. It could be, but what you're really looking for is the right one, and the right one is a package, and the package comes complete. Now, obviously, if you see an obvious, right, as Dr. Lieberman said, if you see someone's conceited, self-centered, he's going to be a difficult person to get married to. But at the end of the day, we all have stuff, and I believe the single criteria you're looking for more than anything else is there a commonality. Again, you've done your paper test. You've done your research, as Rabbi Epstein said. You've done it carefully. So you know that there's no background that you're not aware of. And now the question really ultimately is a commonality. Does it sort of work? And then your goal after you get married is to actually work on the communication, work on the bond, work on the connection, and learn what marriage is really about.
That's very interesting. So let's segue a little bit to dating and marriage. Dr. Lee, we'll start with you. I remember when I was dating my wife, and my wife was like, tell me things that bother her and things like that. And I went to talk with my mother. My mother is one of the most emotionally intelligent people that I know. And she always told me this story. I said, Ma, like, we're discussing things that might, like, kind of like you said, we're discussing things that might come up in a marriage, like, but things don't bother me. Like, what should you do? She goes, I want to tell you a story. She says, when I got married to your father, my father was actually a big tzaddik. She said, he used to put his socks next to the hamper. And like for what? He said, because in his house, his mother used to take it, that's what she did. They would put it in a certain area and she would take it and clean it. And she said, like, what are you nuts? The hamper is right here. Why? Just put it in the hamper. She told me this. She says, I told him for 2-3 days and he still didn't do it. She said, I made a decision. I can either get angry at him. I'm like, what? I decided I'll just put it in the hamper, right? She said, and 3 days later, he put it in the hamper. She said, you have to decide to yourself, do you want to make a big deal about this or not? Again, if it's something that bothers you, express it. Something like what to express emotionally. She said, if it's something that bothers you, but try to work on it first that it doesn't bother you. Which leads us to the next question. When you get married, hopefully you're not criticizing when you're dating, right? We brought this up yesterday, but when you're married, it's a double-sided question. A, how do you tell your spouse something that's bothering you? Yeah. And B, which is I think a bigger question, which I'm sure people come to you more, no one comes to you like, how do I criticize my wife? It's like, my spouse is criticizing me.
Right.
So 2 sides to the question. Let's start with.
Okay, so first, spoiler alert, Rabbi Shafier is going to disagree with what I say. So
That's why I'm in the middle here.
Right. So first,
sides.
I'm thinking, your dad got his socks a lot closer to the hamper than most men do, which is, it's pretty, yeah.
It's the small things.
Yeah, right? So a couple things. First off is, I do believe that in order to have a healthy, functioning marriage, you need to be able to express how you feel. That doesn't mean that you're going to be walking around criticizing your spouse. It doesn't mean that you're going to make mountains out of molehills and everything's going to become a big deal. It doesn't mean you're not going to follow a very smart protocol. End of the day, you don't want that anger to ferment into resentment, which will interfere with the quality of your emotional health and relationship. I mean, that just makes sense. The $1 million question, of course, is, how you communicate it, right?
Or should you, right? At one point, I'm just saying at one point, the person, I'm not saying at what point, but there's a point where the person who's criticizing, it could be really bothering them. It also could be that they're lacking good enough midos to handle it.
100%, which is why, again, there's I wrote a couple of books. One is on, on this, in this area.
What's the name of the book?
Seek Peace and Pursue It. So there's another book, Make Peace with Anyone, but no, similar. And if that doesn't work, there's a book called Get Anyone to Do Anything, by the way. It's on influence.
Links below.
Yeah,
links below in the description.
And if all else fails, well, there's a final book, not the final, the last book I wrote, How Bitachon Works. So that, you always rely on that.
If all else fails, trust us, you're very good.
How to hide the evidence.
Hide the evidence, yeah. So of course there's an extensive protocol to follow to make sure that this is something that you want to bring up in terms of how much time to wait, speak it over with someone, make sure not the problem, and all that stuff. At the end of the day is, you do need to bring it up. There are a couple ways to do that. Just in the interest of time, I think that the mistake we often make is we criticize by criticizing, meaning that you can criticize by praising. So for example, if your spouse is doing something you don't want them to do, those rare occasions they get it right or they get close to it, all you need to do is acknowledge that. Then this way, you're expressing that this is something that's important to you, this is a value, and you'll find it's amazing. See, we all move forward from positivity, not from beating our spouse up or ourselves or anyone else up. So again, this may not always work, but the very first approach is to acknowledge the times they get it right and let them know how much you appreciate that. And you'll find that, a lot of times it corrects the behavior. If for whatever reason that's not working the way you want it to, then when you bring it up, just be smart in terms of literally speaking softly. We think we have to raise our voice sometimes to be heard. Make it a calm conversation. This reminds me of Pence. Remember Mike Pence in the thing? And use what we call I statements. It's pretty much not, the only reason your spouse is going to get defensive is if you put them on defensive. Whereas if I'm in pain and I go to my spouse, the only reason she's not going to want to bring me out of pain is if I put her in pain. Meaning if I accuse her of doing something and she gets defensive, now she feels bad, I feel bad, but she's arguing to defend herself. If I'm in pain and I don't put her in pain, meaning make this about blame, then she is naturally going to want to take me out of pain. Right? In other words, the mechanics are easy, but when you go into it with an accusatory attitude and blaming the other person, making them responsible for your feelings and so on, the natural inclination is, oh, my spouse is in pain, but he just caused me pain. Let me defend myself. So if you're able to approach it with I statements, making it about this is something that you feel and express how you feel, your spouse, if they're reasonably,
I'm assuming many will still get defensive, but you're mitigating the chances, you're saying.
Again, we can do a real life role play, and I can show you how to do this where they don't get, again, the only reason your spouse is going to get defensive is if you accuse them of doing something. If I'm in pain, if I, bang the hammer on my finger, my wife's not going to get upset with me. She'll want to take me out of pain. But if I blame her for that, she may very well get upset with me. So you go to your spouse and you're in pain. The only reason they're not taking you out of pain is if you're putting them in pain.
I hear. Again, we're going to come back to the other question that I had about how to deal with criticism.
Right.
I want to get to it, but I just want to touch on your first point. What you said interestingly was that took the word criticism and changed it to how to get your spouse to change, something that's bothering you, right? In a certain sense, by praising the positive, you took away the word criticism. Reuven, you're chomping at the bits.
I wanted to say the following, and this really goes to the heart of what I believe I do with most couples, which is, first of all, the concept of first of all, that's literally my favorite mitzvah, because I think it's so misunderstood.
I have a whole Torah in there, by the way. I do. I have a whole Torah there. Go ahead.
It's very misunderstood in the sense that a lot of people think that what that means is to criticize somebody or to take a stand on something, but really it's an offshoot of so what Dr. Lieberman is saying is obviously spot on, but meaning the real concept is that if you're going to say something, you first have to ask yourself, is this going to really be heard in the way that I'm saying it? So the way that I like to look at most marriages, because essentially if you dumb down all of marriage complaints, it's that I'm not happy and they need to change and I'm angry and something's getting stuck over here, our energy is not flowing the way that our energy is supposed to flow. So what I always recommend couples do, and this works on the worst cases and it works on the easiest cases, is break down your conversations in your mind between what I like to call level 1, level 2, and level 3. And by default, people will go to level 3, which I'll explain in a second, or level 2, but they'll always skip over level 1. So what level 1 is a relationship, meaning it's going for a walk, it's spending time together, it's making sure that the synergy or the energy in your relationship is actually healthy and it's good. If that's good, and you're able to live a life of connection, of kesher, of oneness, of warmth, of intimacy, where the two of you are feeling close to each other, so if that is happening, so then on top of that, you can build heavier conversations, which is level 2. And that might be a conversation about socks next to the hamper, or it might be about money or children or whatever it is, something that's a little bit heavier, right? And then on top of that, like level 3 conversations are transformative conversations. You really need help. Your father was a very sick man. You really need therapy. I think we should work on something together. Maybe we should work on our midos or on shmiras halashin or whatever it might be. Most couples, when they're in pain, they jump into level 3. They go, you're really sick. There's something wrong with you. You need to change. I need to change. I can't handle this. Or you're always leaving your socks and it's ridiculous. You're just spending money. They jump into level 2 in the negative side of the conversation, if that makes sense. So if you ask most couples, tell me about your marriage, they go, it's a disaster because he's always leaving his socks. It's always 2 and 3. It's always 2 and 3, always 2 and 3. If you go back to level 1 means we actually like each other. We have a good time with each other. We spend time with each other. On top of that, now you can have a higher level conversation. And I challenge anybody, ask yourself if you have a child who's, let's say, upper elementary school age, right? Let's say 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. Your time with that kid, most people, especially if you're busy and you have distraction in your life, will be very level 2 or maybe level 3. It will be something along the lines of, did you do your homework? Are you prepared for the bechina tomorrow?
I don't like how you're doing this.
Right, exactly. It's very functional and usually on something that the child is not really interested in doing versus saying to the kid, I want to really spend time with you. Let's go for a walk. Let's go jogging. Let's play basketball. If you do that and then on the way home, you say to your kid, it would really mean a lot to mommy if you didn't leave all your clothes on the floor, if you threw it into the hamper. Oh, sure, no problem. It's not an attack anymore. It's we are one, we are close. So now if I'm bringing something up, it's really coming out of love because I wouldn't have just spent an hour with you if I didn't really love you. So now it's not the conversation where I'm slowly sticking in the knife. And I like to think that a lot of people, they get, I'll call them communication skills, but it doesn't take away from the fact that they're really hurting their spouse. Meaning they don't yell and scream, because that's like a bomb, but they slowly stab their spouse and then slowly turn the knife. So they go like, I don't like when you do that, and I can't stand when you do this. Okay, you're just saying it nice, but you're attacking them. Meaning, don't take offense to what I'm about to say. Usually triggers the person to take offense, right? That you're doing it in a very nice way, but you're attacking the person.
So obviously, it's a fine line between what he said and what you said, and it's how to do it, right? Obviously.
Yeah, look, I think what the rabbi is saying,
I don't think you're disagreeing. Right?
Is spot on in terms of it all comes back to relationship. People will say we argue over this or that. You argue over your right to be heard, to be respected, to be understood, to be validated. That's what the argument is about. So if, in other words, there's very few things that a spouse is going to be doing that if you feel that they respected you, they cared about you, they loved you, validated, that you'd be bothered by. That ultimately, and what he's speaking about, Rabbi Epstein, so nicely, is that the yesod, the foundation, has to be the relationship. In other words, the issue itself isn't always the problem. That's resolvable if the relationship is solid and strong. If the relationship isn't solid and strong, then the smallest things becomes an issue.
So Rabbi Epstein, I want to clarify. So a couple comes to you and no one's asking how to criticize, right? It's kind of the question. We'll get to the other end in a second. But correct me if I'm wrong, I think your counselor, when someone comes and is complaining about their spouse, say, 1 second, before you deal with that, are you working on your relationship?
Exactly.
Are you trying to be nicer to her?
Exactly.
Is that really what you tell people? So
I sit there, I have a piece of paper, I write down everything that they discuss as the core issues, because usually what they're experiencing, it might be 10 stories, but it's all one, and then yesterday he came home late, and then the day before he came home late, and then the other time he didn't come home from shul on time, it's all the same thing.
You don't find they all boil down to the same thing? He doesn't respect me or her?
It's not, you could say respect, but to me, they're not dialed into me.
Okay.
Right? But yes, I agree, right? Meaning they don't respect my time, right? Or they don't want to spend time. They don't want to feel, exactly, right. They don't want to feel connected. So that's exactly what I do. I say, now let's take these issues. I'm going to write them down. They're not going anywhere. And if you're going to do it your way, they're going to still be here by the next session anyways. Okay, so they're going to be here by the next session. They're not going to be resolved, but we're going to address them, but not by the next session either. Okay, first we're going to put level 1 in, because you guys totally skipped over level 1 for the last.
You spend time with each other, whatever it is.
Exactly, and then we put exactly what level 1 looks like and how to do that. So and then when it comes to level 2, I'm like, okay, now let's pick one thing out of the hat, and what do we want to talk about?
So one of my goals every time I host a panel is I'd like to walk away with concrete tachlis advice. I always say, we hear a lot of chizuk and a lot of shmooze in this world. Right. But if you can come up with this whole panel, right, with one piece of advice that one person will take and transform your life, I think that's it. So you mentioned about this idea of level 1, and I still want to hear about criticism. I love it, but can you give like 2-3 tips of what that looks like to the average person who's missing in it?
Yeah.
Does it mean dating your wife once a week? Whatever it is. What does that mean?
Sure. Level 1, the concept of level 1 is different for every person. I'll say that. So for some people, it means a lot of time that they need. I mean, everybody needs time. A relationship needs time. But in general, if you want to sum up what marriage is connection, it's kesher, it's davak, that's the pasuk, davak. It's not just communication and it's not just respect. It all boils down to actual connection with another person and spending time with that person and being in tune to that other person. So for everybody, it looks different. For one couple, it's having a picnic in the park. For another couple, it's going out for ice cream. For another couple, it's going on vacation. For another couple, it's date night. I've had many couples that told me they go on date night. I told them, stop going out on date night. You're spending money that you don't have. You're getting into arguments in places that they don't want you to have arguments. You guys are just screaming at each other in a restaurant. That's not conducive for what you need. You need to go back to the basics, which is let's hit the reset button on our relationship. Let's make sure that we actually enjoy the time that we're spending together. Anything that's heavy, let's agree to put it on the board or put it in our phones or whatever it is. We'll address one thing at a time when we feel stronger as a couple, and we're going to actually charge our batteries. And the tip that I encourage every couple to do is look at your spouse, look at your children also, and just ask yourself, what charge are their batteries, and I'm the charger. Am I charging them from 0% or 5% or 10%? If the answer is they're at 70, 80%, I guarantee you're doing fine. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody's going to top off at 100%. But most people, if you look at your marriage, you realize that distraction caused disconnection. You're the charger, their batteries are empty, and when a phone starts to lose its batteries, it starts to beep. Apps don't work the way that they used to work. It's going to be very painful, and it's going to show you that something's wrong over here.
And I think on a basic level, what you said is like the common denominator is try to spend time. I read a statistic recently. The average couple, it's a crazy number. They made a survey, spends a grand total of less than 30 minutes a week with a busy family actually talking with each other. Right?
You need quality time.
Quality time. Like you're not stop schmoozing about anything else. Not like busy, not 2-3 stuff. You're dealing with it, right? Less than 30 minutes a week, which is hard to build stuff. So the original question was, how do you criticize your spouse? So Rabbi Shafier, what's your opinion on that?
I'd like to address your other issue. What are the tachlis we could walk home with? Yes. If I could change two things, I would change every single marriage. Number one, I can't agree more with Rabbi Epstein. The relationship, the love, the bond, the connection, that is the yesod of the marriage. And many marriages suffer from one disease and only one disease. That is the relationship just starts withering because they're not paying attention, they're not working on each other. I also put within that a little sniff. I put in the fact that it's the husband's job to romance the wife because you see, the quality of your connection oftentimes is based on your understanding your spouse's needs. An idea of romancing your wife, the idea that you're responsible to buy the gifts, the cards, you're responsible to plan the date night, you're responsible for the relationship, I believe, from my perspective, it's much more upon the man to foster that sense of, I cherish you. Most guys I know, hundreds and hundreds of couples, almost every guy I walk in, I start with asking, how's your marriage? Good, Baruch Hashem. I ask women, how's the marriage? It's terrible, it's horrible. But you guys married like to each other? Now, why is that? Because
men have lower expectations, that's all it is.
I'm sorry?
Men have much lower expectations.
It's more than that. Most men are happy. I love my wife, it's good, and everything's good. And the woman needs that connection, she needs that attention, she needs that bond, communication. That's what women need much more than most. The only guys I know who have those needs are if they have emotional, baggage or things going on. And most guys are pretty happily married until their wife causes unrest. And the key here is
the wife for causing unrest. I'm sorry,
I mean, like it goes like this. In other words, if a woman knows that she's cherished, she'll be happy. The first problem, the first nakuda there is she doesn't feel love. She doesn't. By the way, I believe most women, like the little girl with the daisy. He loves me not. Most women in the beginning of the marriage, he loves me not. The beginning of marriage, I mean the first 30, 35 years. And if you think I'm kidding, I'm not. Many, many women have this. Does he really cherish me? Does he really love me? And if you're not going to allow her to understand that, you're going to be in deep trouble. So the first thing I would say is you got to work on the relationship. Much like Rabbi Epstein says, he calls it level 1. You got to communicate. You have to bond. You have to spend time together. And again, the man's responsibility to romance his wife. But there's a second element. I believe that even if you do that first part, that causes a lot of trouble. This insane, insatiable need to change my spouse. I have to do it. I have to change my spouse. Now, typically, it's going to be my strength and my spouse's weakness. Let's say I'm real on time, real neat and punctual. I can't help but notice that my spouse would be much more effective if she was neat. I can't help but notice it. And because I'm a concerned, loving husband, I share that with her. And this need to change a spouse
I'm sorry, I should interrupt you. Again, maybe I'm wrong. I would assume that most people, if they want to change their spouse, it's not because they're benevolent, they care about them changing. They want them to change because they want to benefit while they're doing it, right? Is that what you meant to say?
I was being a lot more polite.
Okay, well, that's what you meant. Right? That's what you meant. They want to change it because they're being more like them. Okay.
Yeah, my reality begins with my experience, and you're off because you don't match my reality, and I'm going to change you. And if you think I'm kidding, by the way, I've done this time after
No,
time.
I'm saying that's what I said is what you meant to say, right? Okay, good.
A little bit.
It's fine. It's okay. I'll be open. It's all right. Yeah.
By the way, if I spend 45 minutes explaining to a guy, it doesn't work. It never works. Try it again. You're married 20 years. It doesn't work. I've sometimes convinced guys to stop. Never once have I convinced a woman to stop. Never once.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So what does that mean? You've never convinced a woman to try to stop changing her husband?
No, not once.
So that's a problem, right?
I would say so. But do you understand why? It's a maternal instinct. I love him. How can I not help him? I once had a woman, the best example I could think of like this. I had a woman who's ragging on and on.
That's not comforting for men watching this. Let's just put it out there. You know that, right? The guy's watching this and he's upset because his wife always wants to get him to change. And he's like, listen, there's no hope for you. It's not so comforting.
What am I going to tell you? Is some women learn after many, many years. I have this rule, the 20-year rule of marriage. First 20 years, kind of rocky, then it takes off. Why is that? The first 20 years, she tries her best to change him, Finally, after 20 years, he's a stubborn axe, he's never going to change. And suddenly, he's much more pleasant to be with. Suddenly, I don't know why, the relationship suddenly picks up. Suddenly, because you stop trying to change him.
Okay, fine. The bottom line is once you get to 20 years. Okay, fine, I got it. After 20 years, it gets better. Okay, Baruch Hashem.
I had a woman once ragging on and on. My husband this, my husband that. Okay. After I said, madam, I hear you. Many issues you'd like to change about your husband. I get it. Tell me. I'm just curious. Are there anything that you do that might bother him? She thinks a minute and says, yeah, but me, I have to accept. Him, I could change. I said, thank you.
But she still didn't change.
I just want to jump in on one thing that Rabbi Shafier is saying, and again, I'm not sure if we're agreeing or disagreeing, but I'll put this out there. This is just my perspective. I think that, there's a lot of truth to the idea that men, I like to say that men usually walk in the door and they say, who's got two thumbs and is awesome? And they go, this guy's awesome, right? That's usually how most men approach marriage. Because if you ask the average man, what's your biggest complaint? They say, my biggest complaint is that someone's complaining, right? That's their complaint. They want to be happy. They genuinely want to be
like
happy.
Shalom Aleichem, leave me alone.
Women are usually complaining a little bit more, and statistically nationwide, it's like 85% of marriage-related, reaching out for help is initiated by the woman. Now, it sounds like they're always complaining, but the truth is, and this is my perspective, is that men are very much, to me, like a smoke alarm, and women are very much like a carbon dioxide alarm. So what does that mean? It means that a smoke alarm tells you there's smoke. Everybody sees the smoke. Everybody smells the smoke. And they're like, oh, look, there's smoke. And like, oh, yeah, Taka, there's smoke. There's smoke. It's terrible. Yeah, there's smoke, right? Like when it's like there's a fire in front of you, they see it, right? The carbon monoxide alarm, nobody sees it. Nobody senses it, except if you're very in tune to it. So I like to be like Melamed Chus on women, meaning because they're more emotionally attuned, they realize that the fact that he's not paying attention, or the fact that he's on his phone, or he's just playing video games, or he's coming home late, he's not respecting my time, he's not connecting, he's not really paying real attention to me, they're much more sensitive to that, so they call it out much faster. So that to me is it's a maila, meaning that's good.
Epstein, only because we're so close and we share the same mindset. So
that's how you get married. You tell your wife, I love you, so therefore, yeah, go ahead. No?
I couldn't agree more on the relationship, that women are more attuned to the relationship, much more sensitive, much more need the relationship. Let's deal with something else called the need to change my spouse, independent of the connection. Independent, meaning behaviors, habits, approaches, meaning the relationship is one issue. The other is this need to change the spouse. I believe they're codependent, obviously, but I believe it's a separate category, this insatiable need to make my spouse different than they are. And it's invariably, it wrecks the relationship. It never works. He never changes. And I think it's one of the biggest obstacles to a happy marriage, because, as you say, if the guy is usually happy until his wife complains about something. Now, if she's complaining you're not spending time, she's 100% right. If she's complaining you're not paying attention to me, 100% right. If the complaint is, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like, you're not making enough money, you're not, So a woman has a right to feel things, but I have a rule of thumb. If you want to be happily married, there's my little exercise. I have a rule of thumb to be happily married. You walk over to the mirror, you point the finger to the person, look back at you, you say these words, I am a difficult person to live with. I am a difficult person to live with. I am a difficult person to live with. Now, do you mean you're obnoxious? No. We all have stuff, idiosyncrasies. Listen, we're all a work in progress. Hashem put us in this world imperfect, given the role to perfect myself. Now, if I could ever come to grips with that I'm not perfect, I have imperfections, it's a lot easier for me to accept another imperfect person two imperfect people making a perfect match, provided you make space for that other person. The problem is my need to change him, I need to improve him, I need to make him different than he is, interferes with everything. Number one, it annoys him like crazy, doesn't want to make him spend time with you. You're a headache lady. You don't want to so there are two, in my understanding, there are two very discrete issues. One is the relationship. You have to spend time, you have to bond exactly as Epstein said, and again, the man's responsibility, romance his wife. But secondly, independent of that, you have to stop trying to change your spouse. You have to accept, embrace, and understand that he's different than you, she's different than you. Hashem made them different, and your job is to, anytime you have an issue in a marriage, both parties have to work on it. He has to work on changing what he can, she has to work on accepting. And the problem is, if both aren't doing their job, or each one's looking for the other one, you're gonna have a lot of trouble.
Okay, let's segue to the other half and probably equally as important part of this question. And that is that, we're talking about here how to criticize the spouse. I think, Epstein said that people initiate, they're not coming in to say, how do I criticize my spouse? They're coming with the other side. My spouse is criticizing me, and that happens. So the question, let's flip the switch. We deal with the women, men, someone's coming to you and saying that we have a problem. My wife is criticizing me all the time. My husband just doesn't stop, right? I can't take it anymore. I tell him, please stop criticizing me. Rabbi Shafier, you didn't say this, but you have a golden rule about criticism, which is?
Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Three
right?
rules.
It's kind of like the same idea about trying to change your spouse. It just doesn't work, right? So what do you do when your spouse is doing it for you and it's hurting you? How would you do it?
Right. So first, on those brilliant points that the rabbis brought up, is research shows that there are going to be, in any healthy marriage, 6 to 8 things about your spouse that you don't like that you can't change. So
don't like it, you can change.
Right. So if you accept it within the first 20 years, it doesn't have to be, that a sentence before you keep on going forward.
So why does it take people 20 years to accept that? Why can't they do it earlier?
Because the ego says that I need to control, I need to predict, I can't tolerate uncertainty, and I need to be right. So as a person,
More than that, I love him. How could I leave him like that?
No. She loves herself, or he loves himself.
You really believe what you're saying?
Somewhat, yes. I've seen many women who really do. If I don't teach him how to be mensch, who's going to help him? Lady, not you. He may never be, not you. But many times.
Isn't there a truth to that, though? I didn't say it before, but I don't mean to interrupt this idea, but isn't there a truth to that? Meaning, to me, the best relationships is somebody that can turn to their spouse and say, you know me better than anybody. What can I work on?
Yeah.
That's a very healthy relationship.
So meaning
I want to have him over for Shabbos, by the way. Just
in the neshama perspective, which is why.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
No, in the neshama perspective, meaning in the soul perspective, which is not clouded by the ego, right? In that perspective, and I've used your idea, by the way, with the body, the soul, and which is incredible idea. I've used that in counseling a lot, and it's really, really helpful for people to see where they're coming from. But I'm saying if I'm really coming from soul perspective, if I love you and you love me and there's no mechitza between us, then I want you to tell me what I can work on, what I can develop.
She's shepherding him all day long. He doesn't like her anymore, and
that's the ego marriage. What I'm saying is let's be melamed chus for a second on couples that are good couples and strong couples, right? Where they're coming from is good.
It's bothersome. It's annoying. Stop it. You're pouring acid in my eyes. I don't want to hear it all day.
And good doesn't mean healthy. In other words, they can be coming from a good place.
Yeah.
That means it's coming from a healthy place.
By the way, I have a rule.
So if they're really, what I'm saying is, if they're really coming from a good place, then
and what
be like, thank you.
And what happened?
My eyes
She said it
so
once.
much.
She said it twice. 10,000 times she's been screaming, and he hasn't changed yet. Why doesn't she just say,
because
"Wait a minute,
they
it's
don't
not
have
working"?
level 1. So she needs to understand that she's going about this all wrong, meaning she's coming from a level 3 from the ego. And if she goes back to level 1 neshama, then she'll work to level 2 neshama, and then we got to level 3 neshama, and he actually will.
Halach l'maisa. I was born late. I'll probably die late. I come late to everything. I work on davening. I love davening. Every day I come. I love davening. I'm super into it. And every day I come late.
Okay.
And every day I beat myself up. One time in 30 years. One time my wife said to me, maybe if you close Gemara now, you'll be on time to davening. She never said it again. Why? Not that I scowled, not that I meant, but she saw it. I didn't appreciate it. Wait a minute, Shafier, you yell at yourself all the time. You yell, yeah, but I don't want to hear it from somebody else. But my wife is doing it for my good, and she only did it once in 30. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
Okay.
What kind of insurance do you have? I can help.
I believe if you ask any couple that's married a very long time, how did you achieve what you achieved? The answer is not, I was born like this or I got married like this. The answer is my spouse encouraged me, they pushed me. Again, we're interchanging words here. The only difference is
I haven't met your couples. I got to meet your
the
couple.
only difference is that you're saying the word criticism because it's coming from the ego, like Dr. Lieberman is saying. So because of that, there's pushback and there's
And
resistance.
Lou, you were right. It's so dangerous and so overused. I would never say that to anybody. You're going to cause a disaster. Oh, I'm Dilishma, I'm level 3, I'm level 1.
If it's not being heard, then it's not the right time or the right place
So
or the right
I've a rule.
circumstance. But it's not so weird because, again, I'm going to push back
That's
on this
because
one thing.
you're a very unusual person. You're very emotional. You're very growth oriented. I don't want to hear criticism. I don't want to hear it. It bothers me.
Right, but in every couple that you sit with, if you dissected what the complaint is, and you took out the criticism, you took out the kvetching and all of that, and you just focused on the piece that the person is saying. The person is saying this in a total sterile, non-emotional, environment. Again, now let's work on building a relationship, and then let's work on addressing this. Oftentimes, we'll see people change.
No question about it. But the problem is that this is said 40,000 times.
Correct.
And
In-
even
in-
if you
in the
work
wrong
on the
packaging.
even if you work on the relationship, and if it's loving, it's a negative. It's a bad thing. It's not fair. It's not appropriate. It's not right. Why should you change? You should change. What do you,
Okay, we're out of time today. We'll see you back next week. So a wife criticizing has to be theoretical for me because I can't really draw on any real life experiences.
The perfect specimen.
Yeah. Other than denial, I have no problems. I tried talking to myself, just the bill insurance didn't work. Okay, back to this. So somebody comes to us with criticism, and you'll just cut me off when you want because there's a lot to unpack here. As Rabbi Epstein mentioned, and Rabbi Shafier as well, we all have hundreds of talks in Shiurim on Torah time, so if anyone wants a longer explanation. But if somebody comes to you with an issue, with a complaint, right? So the first thing is you need to establish a connection, meaning that, as a saying in sales, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. So up until the point I've established that connection with my spouse, he or she is not interested in what I have to say. So they're coming to me. That connection consists of two intertwining components: empathy and validation. Empathy is not sympathy. Empathy is your pain is my pain. Sympathy is thinks to be you, right? Empathy is I'm genuinely, honestly connected with you, and what you're saying is causing me pain, which means now we don't interrupt our spouse when they're upset. So my body language has to be congruent with whatever it is he or she is feeling. If she's in pain, I can't be incongruent. I have to really have that etched on my face. That's empathy. Validation has nothing to do with right and wrong. Very often people say, I can't validate my spouse because they're crazy. They're wrong. I don't want to give in to this. Validation is just an acknowledgement that this person is entitled to feel the way they do. I understand why this is so painful for you. I get why this is so hard. See, your spouse will never agree with something you're saying while they're busy defending their own position. And you may win the argument, but you'll lose the relationship. In other words, we try to score points, and it's so ineffective because we may be right, but you've just done so much damage. So your spouse comes to you, first thing is you're genuinely giving full time and attention, empathizing, making sure they understand that you can recognize their pain. Then you validate the experience. I can see why this is so hard. You'll see as soon as they do that, they just relax. They take off their glasses, now they can see through your lens. And then once you validate their experience, here, either in that space, or maybe 10 minutes, maybe 10 years, maybe never, is when you'll introduce your perspective. But you can't get them to see through your lens while they're busy wearing their own glasses. So very simply, again, condensing a lot, but your spouse comes to you, empathize, you validate, and then you can continue the conversation. But this is not the time for Gantz Latov, not the time to say, oh, you think that's hard, let me say about my experience, and flip it around. None of that. It's 2 steps. You have that connection, and then you go forward. If both people are doing their parts, you're going to have a very productive conversation. I go to my spouse. I don't blame her. I say, you know what? I'm having a hard time with this. She empathizes. My gosh, I didn't realize that's causing you so much pain. You can see, you move forward very quickly. We don't argue over this, whatever you've circled. We argue over a right to be heard, to be respected, to be validated. Once you do that, the rest are details. But if your spouse feels attacked, they're going to have a very hard time taking their ego, putting it aside, and focusing on your pain. Because when you're in a conversation, you're either focusing on your pain or their pain. You're focused on your pain, you're done. you're able to empathize and focus on their pain, take your eye out of the way, you have a productive conversation.
So I think what Dr. Lieberman said is brilliant. I have one cautionary note. If a husband rarely has a genuine complaint, a genuine thing that they express in that way, I believe the correct attitude should be you accept, you learn to validate, you learn to empathize with them, and you learn the process. The problem is invariably in almost every marriage that I've seen, it's a countless little bothersome criticism that are not big deals and you could overlook, but why should I? And that's what causes the tremendous friction. For those cases, not for this, I have a simple solution. It's a two-part solution also. Let's say it's a wife, let's say for argument's sake, who's criticizing the husband constantly, the socks on the floor, whatever it may be. At a certain point, when things are calm, when things are good, you sit down and say, listen, dear, I would love to change. I wish I were different. I can't. I try hard, and I know how valuable it is to, and I can't do it. You explain it to one time clearly. One time you sit down clearly, and thereafter your reaction is very simple. Ouch. Ouch. The most important things a husband and wife need to learn is the vocabulary of ouch. The word ouch is a highly effective word. The problem usually is my wife says something that I feel is offensive. Immediately I take offense and I give it back in a very clear way. Now, she didn't realize she's offending me. She never would have said it otherwise. And she, being innocently saying something, suddenly gets back something that is totally out of bounds. And obviously she feels upset at me, so she spits back and forth, you're off the races. You say the words ouch, and you don't say another word. You explain it hurts. And I'm not defending myself, ouch. And even better yet, put your head down. Well, you're a wimp, you're a... Sorry you feel that way. Sorry you feel that way. See, if I'm not going to defend myself, hopefully eventually, meaning it doesn't always work because sometimes people are persistent beyond belief. And many people in their marriage are going to change him.
We call them women, right? Yeah.
They're going to change him if it kills him, her, and the marriage, which it will. And they continue and continue and continue. But eventually, hopefully, a person gets enough realization it's not helpful, doesn't work. And again, the word ouch is a very effective way. You're letting your spouse know, I'm in pain, ouch. I don't know.
I want to take a little bit of a different approach here, if I may. Okay, so first of all, the idea that your spouse is saying something that you have to change is, I'm going to validate it. It's very normal and it's very common. And it doesn't mean that the person who's saying something is crazy. Usually the person has a nugget that has absolute truth in it that you actually do need to change or you do need to address or you've caused them some sort of pain and it is packaged in their own pain. So it comes across as criticism or attacking or belittling. And to me, the tool of marriage is not to invalidate it or even the empathy side of things, like, oh, I hear that you say that. Of course, it's a valid tool. But the idea of saying the negative back to your spouse by quantifying what the nugget that they're trying to convey to you is, that is how you're going to diffuse situations. Meaning, I'll explain to you. If you just say to the person, oh, I'm sorry you feel that, right? Let's say a husband comes home late. He doesn't text his wife, right? And his wife's like, where were you? This is ridiculous. Like she's screaming at him, right? He's like, I'm so sorry that you feel that, right? Yeah, it's very valid that you feel whatever you feel, right? And he goes through those things. Or he's like, ouch. Like, you're killing me, because he feels, let's put the ego in, he feels like I'm working for you, for the family, and where's my respect, and how do you talk to me that way? I think that couple is missing what's really going on. What's really going on is that the husband, because he's distracted, he got caught up with things outside of his wife. His wife felt that disconnection because she's a carbon monoxide detector, and therefore the alarm started beeping. And she said to him in a very nice tone, hey, it would be nice if I didn't feel abandoned at home, and if you checked in with me when you were on the way home so I knew what to expect you. That's what she meant to say. Now, that's not what she said, but that's what she meant to say. And if he was strong enough and confident enough and man enough, masculine enough, which to me is a visual of someone who's not so up and down, but someone who's able to be strong, he would say to his wife, wow, I made you feel like I don't care about you. He says the negative. He actually says to her, I made you feel like I'm not checking in with you. You must have been worried. Where am I? You must have felt like I don't care about you. You must have felt like I have other priorities outside of the home. If he actually says what she's trying to say, I guarantee you there's no apology needed. They're not fighting with each other. They don't feel invalidated because she's saying something smart and he's saying back the smart thing that she said.
What if it happens the 100th time in a row?
So then he's not really validating what she's saying, and this is the part that we might disagree on.
It didn't change. What can it mean?
But this is the part that we might be disagreeing
Why
on.
can he validate that?
Because if your wife is telling you time after time after time that she feels like you don't care about her because you have other priorities, then listen to what the woman's saying.
Listen, I want to change. I want to do change.
So then no, that's not true. If you really want to change, you will change. You will stop not calling her. You will call her before you go home. You will set an alarm for tomorrow. You will check in with her. You will text her. It takes 2 seconds.
What do you do with things not as egregious as that? There, he's clearly wrong, and he really can change that, and he should be more considerate. What about the constant, let's say the socks on the floor example, of messy, he's not on time. That's his nature, and he's not going to change. And she keeps bothering him, and there's no way he's going to have the emotional fortitude to, yes, dear, you must feel that I don't care about you, because it's not true. That's his nature, that's his temperament.
So if he's wise, now why does it bother, let's talk about this for a second, okay? Why does it bother a woman so much that her husband leaves the socks on the floor, not in the hamper? The answer is not that she has to pick up his socks on the floor. It's because she feels something emotionally. And what I believe most communication is, you communicate an emotion in words. That's what most people are actually communicating to me. So if you're in tune to what they're communicating, she feels like he doesn't care about her. He doesn't appreciate the hard work that she puts into the home. He doesn't appreciate the fact that she's the one who has to bend down and pick up the socks. So that's what she's really expressing to him. So if he says to her, he speaks the negative and he says, you must feel. And then he says whatever I just said. You must feel that. I just want you to know, it's really not the case. I appreciate how much you put in with the kids. And he really shows her that emotion gets addressed, then she will overlook the fact that he dropped the socks on the floor because she's actually getting that emotion met. Listen to what she's really saying and address what she's really saying. If you invalidate what she's really saying, then she's going to say, this is ridiculous. I have no voice in the marriage. Every time I say something, he says, ouch. If I shut down, I wait, and then I explode. A woman has to have an avenue to be heard and to bring a full circle.
The problem is when an avenue is abused and abused and abused.
Agreed.
Every issue and time after time, this and that, it becomes a thunderstorm. Leave me alone, madam. So what I tell women at that point is, see, a husband can't say it, but I can. For every 5 things, for everything that bothers you, I guarantee there are 5 things that you do that bother him more.
Okay.
So, 1 second. For everything that he does that bothers you, I guarantee there are 5 things that you do that bother him more.
Okay.
Would you like him to constantly repeat them? Would you like him to constantly be on you? Would you like him to repeat?
What are those things? So let's put them on the table.
I will tell you.
But that's what I'm saying. Why are people so resistant to change? You got married to somebody.
Because the reality is, that's my temperament, that's my nature. Typically, it's going to be an inborn, innate trait that she wants to change or that I want to change. Typically, it's not something just like inconsiderate or something not being polite. It's going to be something that's innate to the human being that he can change.
The guy was doing it 10 years before he got married, basically.
Understood, but if his wife has such an emotional reaction, what's the emotion? What is she saying? She's usually saying, I feel like you don't care about me. I feel like you look at me like I'm a cleaning lady, like I'm walking around the house picking up your stuff. You don't care about me enough. If he takes that battery and he charges the battery outside of his socks on the floor, usually a wife will say, oh, I see that you really do appreciate what I'm doing for you.
You're failing in this area.
And if he says to his wife, you're right. I really wish I could be more mindful in this area. I struggle with this. It's nothing personal to you. You're right 100% of what you're saying. Because you're really saying that you feel like I treat you this way. I do not intend to treat you this way. I apologize that that's how you're feeling. I'm going to try to work on it. You're talking the same language if you're just negating the whole conversation.
Again, I think now you were saying to yourself, but you're saying before the guy has to change. Here you're saying if you build up your level 1, it won't bother her so much, even if that other thing.
I'm saying that if the guy, if the things that are within his ability to change, he will change. Meaning if he's actually in tune to it, if he's not calling his wife when he leaves the office,
and the things he can change,
right? And the things that the word "can't change" is a very strong word.
Difficult.
I had a couple last night. Last night I had a couple. She was about to get. She was ready to get divorced. She was really ready to do it, and she was ready to pull the plug. They had been going to a therapist who, for a year straight, blamed him for being not on time, not considered. And I realized something, that the therapist had done a very good job of convincing him to change. But the problem was he was now at about maximum of what he's going to accomplish. I looked at this kid. He's not the most organized kind of person. He's a little bit eccentric. He's a responsible citizen. He has a job, but he's going to kid will make up an hour late. That's his nature. He's now worked on it to an extent that he's really trying his best. He's putting in every effort. The problem is the therapist kept harping on the fact that he has to change, She was ready to get divorced. I told him, you're making a mistake. He's a good guy. He loves you. He's responsible. And this is who he is. And you have a choice to make. Either you're going to be happy and embrace him as he is, or you're going to suffer. You get divorced, you'll find somebody else. There's a whole package of other problems. He's now working very diligently. He loves you. He's attached to you. He's very much dedicated to you. If you'll just embrace him as he is, you'll be happy. Or you'll listen to the other. Anyway, they dropped the other therapist, and thank God they're now.
They're at the best. But I wanted to say that there's a lot of truth to what is being said, but I still believe that I'm not saying everybody has to change everything in their life, but most of the time, and I could use extreme examples that I've dealt with of couples that have gambling or other addictions. If a person says to the other person, I'm sorry that I am making you go through this. I'm sorry that this is my chesaron. It's something I know I really need to work on. As opposed to just saying like, I'm sorry you feel this way, meaning this is an inborn issue, I need help for this. The person will try to go for therapy. They'll be open to discussing their issue, maybe their childhood. If the relationship is strong and they recognize that their spouse is calling them out on something which actually needs to be addressed, as opposed to just saying like, accept me for who I am who I am, I can't change. No, your spouse has a right to say to you on certain things, you've got to change, you got to address this.
What I think is really the answer, that you're right, the person should want to change, but the other side, the spouse can't try to make them change.
Agreed.
Or else you're going to suffer.
They could encourage them, they could stand by them.
It's not their avoid to try to change you.
Agreed.
Encouraging is a sneaky way of changing. I'll do it with positive reinforcement. I'll do it with consequence. I'll do it. No.
The couples, to me, the couples that have gone through the worst things and have come out the strongest are the couples where there's complete openness, where they talk about the negative. They don't just say the positive. They don't just say, tell me 5 things you appreciate about me. No. They say, this is an issue. We agree we got to deal with this issue. As long as you're going for help, I will support you in your help. As opposed to just saying like, I have
totally
nothing to do with
starting a
this.
podcast, the two of you. Rabbi, at the Lieberman, you're sitting here. Let's schmooze a little bit. You know what I'm saying? You and me, like I feel like I'm enjoying this popcorn. I try, but we have to talk a little bit something else.
There's such value in what they're both saying, and the example I give is a couple things. One is in terms of changing. I have my $1 million briefcase test that I do with people. I said, if I gave you $1 million to do X, Y, Z every day, would you have, $7 million in your pocket at the end? They all say, yeah. In other words, it's not that, but someone being late or not late, all this stuff, unfortunately, you can drift into passive-aggressive behaviors where they're doing bedafka because they know it's inconveniencing, which is a whole different area. But what Rabbi Epstein is saying in terms of is that if you go to your spouse with something that's bothering you, and you say, this bothers you to X, Y, Z, and with tears streaming down their face, they said, I'm so sorry, I've got my child and stuff, this, I don't mean to cause you pain with this, I don't know why I do it, I don't know this, and that. You would then try and bring your spouse out of pain. In other words, you would be like, it's okay, it's not the end of the world.
You were saying that a little bit, but
that's the extreme example of what I'm saying.
Right. But
exactly.
But if you can see it in that contrast, you can recognize it comes back to the same thing. It's not the socks on the floor. It's not where the kids sit for Shabbos. It's not whether you rent or lease a minivan. It's whether I feel heard and respected. So if I'm doing something that's bothering my spouse, but they know it's not because I don't care, I don't respect them, I don't love them, I'm inconsiderate, whatever it is, and I'm in pain because I'm causing them pain, it will no longer be an issue. They may not like it, but our relationship won't suffer as a consequence. Do you hear the distinction?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I was trying to say, Reuven, that's a great point. The point where you say that you have to change yourself, and if you don't, you're in trouble. I think that's a hard thing to balance. I do agree with this point, though.
What I'm saying is that when your spouse is saying something to you, don't be so quick to be dismissive of it and just say, oh, they're attacking me or they're criticizing me. Have the confidence to not be so nispal from your spouse. Listen to what they're trying to convey to you.
I always say that's your avoid.
Yes.
But again, that's what Nesanel said before, is that if your spouse brings it up in a way that engages your ego, you have to be in a healthy enough position and have the emotional bandwidth at that time to be able to navigate that. And that's where couples get hung up, which is another point in terms of if you don't have the space to deal with something, just as Chazal put fences around halacha, be smart. There's a way to avoid an escalation from conversation that you don't have the ability or capacity at that moment to engage in. So your spouse wants to bring something up, It's okay to say, I can see this is something that's so important for us to speak about. I'm just, for whatever reason, don't have the ability to give this the attention and energy it deserves. Would it be okay if we spoke about it after supper or so on? Any reasonable person, hopefully, would acknowledge that. Then you can enter in a healthier space. But as we're all speaking about here, if somebody comes into it with their ego or you just get defensive, the conversation's going to go sideways quickly.
All right, let's be a happy matzav, okay? Right, I called my sister before and I'm like, tell me some things that, what could I ask these people, right? So it gives a good advice. So she says, what are tips that can make a marriage better, right? She said, someone told her, recently you have to go to sleep with this husband at the same time. I'm like, I can hear it, but it's very hard feasible. It's like eating dinner together. Give me some, Dr. Lieberman, everyone has marriage, we're trying to improve it. Obviously, we're talking about very heavy topics and trying to deal with real issues that are very important, that happen all the time. But sometimes you fix things, they always say, in business, right? One of the definite things in business and in fundraising, no one's giving money for a mice that owes $100,000, right? You say, oh, yeah, sure, we're losing $100,000. No, we are building, we're flourishing, we want to go further. Sometimes you actually do better by focusing on the positive than by trying to fix the negative. I'm sure in marriage it's the same way. Agreed? I'm going to patent that. So the bottom line is, what can we tell couples? Some 3 or 4 tips.
Good.
That can make a good marriage even better.
Good. A couple things. One, going back to your statistic you cited before, rather than that 30 minutes of direct, honest, open, non-distracting communication, expand that, where you're actually in each other's dalet amis, but focused in. There's no phone. You're not checking to see if it's important. It's not even on the table to see if the kids call. It's done. It's away. Because anytime something intrudes in that space, you've just now hit the reset button. That there's something very valuable about uninterrupted time. And a lot of couples will say, I don't want to do that. They'll both say they don't want to do that. Now that's the problem.
They're a negative one.
Right, so you really do need, and we talk about quality time. It's about time not spent even talking about the kids or about the problems or about the bills. It's about reconnecting and re-engaging. Of everything, I think that is going to be one of the most valuable in terms of building a foundation towards a healthier marriage.
You can't. Professor Cohen once said, you can't have quality time without quantity time. In other words, if you're not making that time, it's not working. Okay,
That's right. That's right.
What other cool tips can you give?
Something else is that when something's bothering you, rather than simply just waiting for your spouse to walk into the door or waiting for yourself to come home and start bills, make sure it's what you say, how you say it, but man, the when is so important. If you're in that constricted consciousness, or your spouse is, you're hungry, tired, cranky, it's not going to be a productive conversation. You could read every book and listen to every expert in the subject about what to say, just how to say it, but if you pick your wrong time when you're just in that animated, constricted space, it's going to go sideways.
You can even think the opposite. I'm trying to look for a positive thing. You're saying if you want to give even a good compliment, if it's like, something I tell my wife, and she's like, I'm busy now, right? Like, she's not going to hear right now.
I don't have time for this compliment.
What?
I don't have time for this compliment.
Right. So I'm sorry. So you're right. Is it going back?
I've never heard that one. I don't have time for this compliment. That one I've never heard.
Go ahead.
Appreciation and gratitude, acknowledgement. In other words, in addition to the modeling that you're doing for the children, it's just incredible to be able to just, we think sometimes we're just going to focus in, not we, but there are people who just point out the things that their spouse is doing that they don't like, that aren't working, that they're not happy with. If you're just mindful, because what will happen is there's a whole part of the brain called the reticular activating system that basically sort of filters out what you're not focused on. But if you're looking for the good, you want to see the good, you expect to see the good, you're acknowledging the good, it'll be good. You know what I'm saying? In other words, if you're focusing on the bad, you're just going to see, feel, and send off those vibes, emotional and spiritual. So I would encourage couples to, when your spouse does something that you appreciate or doesn't do something that you're glad that they didn't, and that is just to acknowledge it. And the last thing would be, is Rabbi Shafier said something so smart before, is that, if somebody does something one time, is one-offs, ignore it. In other words, you don't have to call your spouse out on, could they have done something smarter, easier, better, faster than you would have done it? Sure. But there's what to say for editing yourself. And you know what? If there's a pattern of behavior, as Rabbi Epstein spoke about, of course, then they're not really validating this is something you want to bring up. But if they're one-offs and it's not something that they're consistently doing, let it go. They'll know you let it go, And guess what? They're going to let your one-off slide also.
You're a psychologist, so explain to me the fascinating phenomenon of human nature, and that is that we always point out the negative. They say kids here, I think, with 80 no's to 1, like
Yeah.
crazy
So
numbers.
there's a
So
couple
why
things.
is it that we can't compliment?
Good.
What's
A couple things. We'll start with 3, and you'll cut me off when you want. One is something called negativity bias, which says that we're 6 times more likely to focus in on the negative than the positive. There's that. 2 is just habits. In other words, we get used to this, and it's a habit. We know those people who walk into a room, everything's beautiful and perfect. They'll zero in on the one thing that's not right, that's not working, that's broken. They're not fun to be around. They're not fun to have a marriage with. They're not fun for kids. They're not fun for anybody. So, like a lot of habits, you want to recognize what's at stake and begin to sort of, retrain yourself and then to focus in on the positive. But the inclination, people say sometimes it's my nature. Maybe yes, maybe no. There are some people that are more prone towards that, but there are also learned behaviors. And these are the things that you can do, you can adopt. And I think recognizing what's at stake and the significance and how much of a difference it makes in the quality of your marriage goes a very long way towards reorienting your perspective and focusing in on the positive rather than the negative.
I'll tell you a funny story. They say, like, women, by nature, we're taught that we have to compliment women, but men never compliment men, which it's not our nature. And the joke is that a guy remembers a compliment he said. So 20 years ago, a guy told me he looks good.
Right.
I was speaking in my father-in-law's shul, not much just past Shabbos, and I said the story that someone remembers a compliment 18 years ago. Guy goes over to me, he's like, 18 years ago, you gave me a compliment about you liked how I learned, I still remember it.
Wow.
Whoa, right? Men, I'm telling you, we compliment each other. The best thing, I think, for a man, a compliment is that's more valuable. But anyways, Rabbi Shafier, what are some advice about how to make a marriage better?
Have fun. Have fun. Have fun. The relationship is essential, and you must spend time, but you also have to have fun. And one of the questions I ask couples regularly, are you guys friends? Are you guys friends? Because besides for being, clearly intimate and clearly having a unique relationship, you have to be kind, sweet, and nice. You have to be friends. Friends act in a particular way. And many times in the attempt to busyness of life, we stop being friends. So I would say you constantly go out once a week, spend time together. It's a gentleman's job to romance his wife. Avoid changing your spouse. And just remember that you're supposed to be best friends who love each other. You learned how to act perfectly when you were chassan and kala. For every chassan and kala knew exactly how to act.
So you have that in you. Even though let's say it hasn't happened in 20 years, you have it in you.
Go back to those days and act like that. I tell chassan and kala now always, memorize in your mind exactly how you treat her. You memorize exactly how you treat him, and just keep that way. Life will be beautiful. You treat him like a king, he'll treat you like a queen. But you just have to remember that point. And
I love it. You glossed over, I think, like the most famous line, go out once a week, right? And I think everyone agrees with it and they internalize it, but just don't do it. Right? One of the things that I wanted to ask, and Reuven, I want to hear your tips in a second. But I think one of the questions we always have, is that you hear great advice, but there's like lepoil, right? Like, how do we actually get it done? We're so busy, distracted. Everyone's working harder. Example, you remember Rabbi Siddiman from Torah Bima? He's my Rebbe. So to this day, my Rebbe moving. So one of the things I discussed with him once was that my opinion is Friday night, I don't want any guests. Why? Because the old home, when we grew up, a lot of people used to have family dinners, right? There was a classic thing, you ate supper with your family. Today, it's actually a rare thing. Just the mitzias. It would be healthy, it would be amazing. So once or twice a week, I'm with my kids. I don't want anyone else. And he agreed 100%. So the same thing, I think, we're busy, we're distracted. We don't always go out with their wives. We have to make the time. And like Rabbi Shafier said, now, the onus is on the men, and I love that, right? Some of the guys say, you arrange it for me. No, it's on you. You have to make sure it happens, right? Lesson learned. But what suggestion would you say how to taka make it lepoil,
So there's two things. I'll call this like the lower level and then the higher level over here. The lower level is the way I work with every couple is when they sign up to work with me, I tell them, you're gonna sign up to the following. You're signing up to doing short attainable goals with consistency and accountability. And that's how people change. Short attainable goals means something that it's not in theory, it's very practical. We're gonna say you do X, Y, and Z, exactly what that is.
It's not forever. You're going out once a week, next week, whatever, exactly.
You're saying once a week, to me it's daily. So the way it works with couples is that it's short attainable goals. It's going to be with consistency. Consistency means every day, right? And then accountability is going to be me. So all my couples, they check in with me every single day. So it's half of it that I know what's going on in their relationship, but the other half is that they actually have somebody holding their feet to the fire to make sure that they're doing whatever it is that they signed up to do. And then every session we tweak whatever it is that they're trying to work on. So they'll say, we're now working on X, Y, or Z. So it's not once a week. If it's once a week, you don't charge your phone once a week, or you don't water your grass once a week.
I think Rabbi Shafier actually read this from you, I think, years ago, that you said that couples that will speak 10 minutes a day are much better off than like a 4-hour date once a week.
Yeah.
They're connected much more.
Because if it's consistent, then the battery's always charged. It doesn't get into negative territory. right? So when you allow things to get into negative territory and then you say, oh, now let's go spend 3 hours together in a restaurant, spend $500, you're not going to be on the, on the highest level of connection at that point. So that's number one. The second thing that I would say, which again, maybe you'll say that this is for certain couples, it's not for everybody, but to me, marriage is, as Chazal say, lekasher daitoi b'daita. It's interweaving two people's brains into one. Think about, it's like two parts of it, two teammates, like whether it's in the NBA or the guys who, they row those long canoes or whatever it is, like in those races, their brains have to be in sync with each other. So to me, the idea of a couple, you have his brain and you have her brain, and you work to weave it together so that your decisions are joint, the way that you spend money is joint. To me, that's the optimum. So most couples, when they start a conversation, they realize that they're segregated, they each have their own viewpoint, and then they go, okay, I guess we just disagree to, we agree to disagree. Or okay, I'll take this one and you'll take the next one, or we'll compromise. To me, there's a little bit of a higher level. I'll tell you a very quick story. I went with my wife to Zion National Park. Gorgeous, gorgeous park. We went last year. We didn't plan this, but it was literally like the hottest day of the year. It was like the hottest week of the year. They had signs outside the parks that said, warning, you may die. Like heated advisory, literally, warning, you may die. And they usually have somebody collecting money for the parking. They didn't even have somebody standing out there. It was literally like 125 degrees. It was bananas. So, and they said that in Death Valley, just a few hours away, it was like 145 degrees. It was crazy, like the numbers were crazy. So we went anyways, and we had it scheduled. We went on hikes. We went on a few hikes. It was stunning, it was gorgeous. We were passing out, but it was a really, really nice day. At the end of the day, we drove back to where we were staying in Hurricane, Utah. We got back to where we're going, and I turned to my wife and I said, my wife knows that I like photography. So I said, this whole trip, I've been taking pictures, this and that. I said, but it's always been my dream to take pictures in a dark park, which is one of those dark parks, happens to be Zion National Park, astrophotography, where there's no light. Tonight at like midnight, I'd love to go back and take some pictures of the stars. My wife's like, okay, I said, no, but I would really like if you came with me, okay? My wife's like, we just hiked for like 8 hours, it's 125 degrees outside. I said, I know, but before you say no, just think for a minute. It would be very meaningful to me if you allowed me to push you to come with me. I think it would be very cool. Like we would have a cool experience being out in the middle of nowhere taking pictures of the stars. And I was like, can I have a minute to think about it? I was like, yeah, sure. So we drove back to the house where we were staying, and the whole time my wife was like, I didn't push her, but I was like, just like, like looking at my watch, like
subtle messages.
Yeah, like subtle messages. And then it got like a little closer to the time. I was like, okay. She's like, I know you would really appreciate this. Let's go. I said, but I'm only going on one condition, meaning I'm only going with you. I can go by myself. I'm only going with you if you really wrap your head around this experience. I mean, I don't want you sitting in the car on your phone. Like if you're coming with me, I want you to wrap your brain around this experience. My wife's like, okay, I got it. She came with me. We went out there. We spent like an hour and a half taking pictures of the Milky Way galaxy and stars. It was the most incredible experience. My wife left her phone in the car. She told me after on the drive back, she was exhausted, I was exhausted. My wife's like, I can't thank you enough. In my life, I never would have had this experience, standing out there under the vastness of the pitch black sky on Rosh Chodesh. Like literally there was no moon, it was incredible. My wife's like, I appreciate you pushing me and this experience, I never would have had this experience. To me, that is like a small. It's where I have an idea, you don't have this idea. Your idea would be, no, I don't want to do this. You allow yourself to be pushed, to be encouraged, and then to weave through so that it wasn't my decision, it was our decision. And I told my wife, I said, didn't we have a good time? Not like, didn't we have a good time and she's miserable? She was like, no, this was truly enjoyable. So to me, if you, the tip is that stop compromising in your marriage. If you need to compromise in certain things, you compromise. But the higher level is not compromise. The higher level is where you own a decision together, where you slow down.
My foot hurts, right?
Exactly. You slow down. You take your time. You make decisions where the two of you actually own it, and it's not me versus you. It's very hard for you to tell who came up with the idea in the beginning. That is like the highest level, in my opinion, of what marriage is supposed to be.
I love it. Mama Shul, by the way, someone asks, again, what's the number one need to look for in a spouse? I would say it's easygoingness. It's like, there's no shy.
That's my answer as well.
No question.
I'm in that portion now. It's flexible.
No rigidity.
Right. Do you agree with that, Rabbi?
Not at all. The right ingredient to look in a spouse is the right one. What that combination is, what that exact measure is very hard to, I need someone tall, fat, short, skinny, like a lot of money, this kind of intelligence, this kind of sense. You don't have a clue. well, I know this meat is good, this meat is not good. First of all, every pot has a cover, and you have your own stuff going on, and you don't know what you need. You need to follow God's plan. God picked the right one for you. There's an intuitive sense that you use.
Within the intuitive sense, it is probably that you're looking for flexibility, right? I'm saying.
I would absolutely disagree. Wow. I absolutely, categorically disagree.
Yeah,
You're saying you look for nothing. You're saying you
I
look for
agree with
nothing.
you.
If I had to pick the best girl in Brooklyn to
I hear what
marry,
you're saying.
I'd do that. But my job is not to pick the best girl in Brooklyn. My job is to pick the person who's right for me. And that person,
I think the best thing to look for when you're doing research is to find out if they're flexible. That's probably the good mahal,
Yeah.
right?
Flexibility is an
Flexibility
incredible.
is a great advantage. But that's not indicated that she's the right one for me or not the right
Right,
one.
agree.
So what criteria then would you use?
So again,
For
provided
research,
the-
a second. When you
research.
research it, you find she's a
Anything-
good girl, but she's tough. He's a good guy, but he's strict. Whatever.
Okay, so anything you're not going to find out on a date, any emotional, psychological issues that you're not going to find out, any skeletons in the closet, gambling addiction, drug addiction, whatever.
But how
it
do you
may be.
know that's not your bashert? Somebody who
It
has an
could
issue
be,
with that area.
And you have to ask a shal if you have a similar sort of background. Sometimes you're right, but typically, assuming you're coming from a normal background, that's not a good match. Then you take the bashert test. But bashert test is incredibly intuitive. You see, I don't know what I need. Excuse me, can I have a mushel? Can I do a mushel? Here we go. A young woman, her sister got engaged, and the wedding is 2 months off. So she finds a perfect dress at Sneas on sale. It's great. She has a perfect dress. Only problem is you need a pair of shoes to go with it. She shops, can't find it. This one. It's a week before the wedding. She's panicking. A week before. She finally, 2 days before the wedding, she walks into Macy's clearance section. It's a gorgeous pair of shoes, perfect leather. It's so fashionable. It's great. One problem: 2 sizes too small. I can't pass. But she takes it, dances 3 hours at her sister's wedding, takes the shoes off, and she discovers the feet are killing her. The workmanship can be great, and the shoe can be stylish. It has to fit the foot. Hashem knows exactly the right fit. I need someone like this. I need someone, I need someone introverted, extroverted, sense of humor, flexible. You don't know what you need. So provided that you've done the paper test. Paper test, you get rid of anything that would be, again, things you're not going to see on a date, anything that would really interfere with the marriage in a major way. And then you see, is there commonality? Does it work? Does it sort of flow? Well, I would matter. Again, if I'm looking for the best girl in Brooklyn, I look for someone flexible, great midos, et cetera, but I'm not looking for the best girl in Brooklyn. I'm looking for the one that Hashem determined is the right one for me. And the way you do that is you take the paper test, the Bashar test, and then you close your eyes and say, Hashem, it's your world, you created it, you run it, I trust in you. Anyone who says that I know what I need, I ask them a simple question. Do you know what you're going to need when you're 52? How long do you plan on getting married? You're now 22. You plan on being married for 50 years, 60 years, right? You know what you're going to be like when you're 70? How could you pick someone? I know what I need. And you know what you're going to be like when you're 40, when you're 50? You can't know what life's going to bring. Bottom line is paper test, Bashar test, and we're good. Ask me if my wife agrees. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
She says flexibility.
And I say this so many times to people, and people call me all the time with shilas, and I tell them exactly these words, and that's why they ask me.
So I want to end up with we'll end up with a little bit of a good chizuk and minut b'tachan. There was a young woman, she worked for me, her name was Sarah Medina. She's married now, Baruch Hashem. I think she got married around 24, whatever. And I always felt that her message should go out to the world. She was the healthiest single I ever met. What does that mean? She would just say, like, I'm very happy being single. I met Hashem, I'll be very happy being married. But she didn't have that angst that people have when they're 20. They feel like they're grandmothers already. But Chassidus Welt, the guys are 20, the same thing. They're mamash. You know, the Chassidus Welt is yeshivas. For Baruch, they're 20. They're like, it's crazy. Anyway, that people feel this angst and anxiety and their fear. You know, one thing I always said that you could, let's see if it's validated by the doctor. The problem with people have with fears and anxieties, they think it's forever. Someone's sick, they're afraid they're going to die. Someone doesn't have children, they think they'll never have children. Someone's single, they're never going to get married. It's always you're always afraid of the extreme, right? But Baruch Hashem, people do get married, do that chizuk. So I want to, Rabbi Epstein, we'll start with you. I'm going to go this way. What chizuk would you give to the single person who's either taka older or feels like they're older and they're afraid, hey, I'm never going to get married. I'm not much afraid. I'm sure you've dealt with people like that. What chizuk can you give a person like that?
So first of all, I like what you said. This girl said, right now I'm single and I'm good being single, and in Mitzvah Hashem I'll be married and I'll be good married. I think that's the healthiest attitude towards being, in any stage of life, which is that you're not in a desirous state. When somebody has desire, it means that they want something without the steps that are necessary to get them to that thing.
With right now.
Exactly. Right now, this is the stage that Hashem put me, and I'm very happy there. Now, the reason why that's also so important is because the best version of yourself, when a person is the best version of themselves, then usually you attract the best version of the person that's going to be, attracted to you. So that when a person is desperate, when a person is desirous, when a person is down, all of these stages of a person, being in that emotional state is the worst thing that they can do. So, of course, course, tefillah, and of course, hishtadlus. You could buy Rabbi Shafer's book or Dr. Lieberman's
You have
book.
a book on marriage. You have a book on dating?
I have a book on dating and soon to be on marriage as
What's
well.
the book on dating called?
So my editor was very smart and he called it the Complete Guidebook series. So it's the Complete Guidebook to Dating for Marriage, the Complete Guidebook to Marriage, and the Complete Guidebook to Family Purity. So, yeah. And then if you're smart, then you'll read Rabbi Shafer's book, which is all about doing dumb things. But
Naturally, you don't have to
but yeah, the idea behind it is that it will sort of set you, towards dating smart.
The Ishtadlus is the best version of yourself. It ends up bringing the best.
Be the best version of yourself. Study it a little bit so that you're not just dating. If a person is dating and every date is one and done, then there's probably something off in their dating. If a person is dating and they're getting 4, 5, 6, you know what I'm saying? Like they're getting somewhere and they just feel like for some reason they're not closing out, that you're probably doing smart things. So in your research stage, it should be smart. In your dating stage, it should be smart. But it shouldn't come from a place of negative emotion. It should be, I'm excited to be me. I'm living the best life that I can right now. Doesn't take away from the fact that I want to get married. And then in Meretz Hashem will do the rest.
So I just want to say before we go to Rabbi Shafer, you remind me of a great piece of advice. You said if someone has one date and done, it's a problem. I knew somebody, a young woman, every time, one date, they would end it. Or right before the date, they would end it. And what did they do? They had someone else call all the references. And one reference said really nasty stuff. It was a neighbor. So I actually had one of my employees, a young man Lubavitcher, I told him this idea, totally forgot about it. 5 minutes later, he calls me back. He's like, Nesanel, remember you got a reference call from me like a few weeks ago? So I want to tell you, sir, I did it myself. I tested you. You were on my reference list. So he said, Baruch Hashem, the guy said, everyone's okay. This Gantz guy, you got to keep on, right? Because he knows how to sell you. But he took out a friend of his, Baruch from Yeshiva, who said, he's a good Baruch, he doesn't always come to Minyan, whatever. He was honest, he was trying to be beneficial. So a great tip is find someone else you trust and check references. Not because they're bad people, because they might not always say the best thing. So Rabbi Shafer, what advice would you give to the single person who is struggling, who comes to you and they're broken? And again, it doesn't matter how old they are. People can be broken at 18, broken at 30. What would you say to them?
The two things that underscores all emunah, all bitachon. Those two principles are, number one, Hashem loves me more than I love me. As much as I want my best, as much as I'm interested in everything good for me, Hashem wants it even more. Hashem loves me more than I love me. That one's pretty simple. The second principle...
It's hard to accept it. I don't know what I'm saying.
That one's pretty easy. It's the second one that gives us all the trouble.
Says the guy with no emotion. To the, you know what I'm saying?
The second one is that Hashem knows better than I what's for my best. As much as I know what I need, as much as I know what should be, Hashem knows even better. As much as I have my life planned out exactly, Hashem has a better plan. Hashem knows better than I what's my best. If a person embraces those two concepts, they understand Hashem has a plan. I'm along a journey. Exactly when I'm ready, exactly when He's ready, exactly what the situation. There's a creator who orchestrates the world. He created the world, He runs the world. I take my heavy load, I transfer it to Hashem, and life is good.
I appreciate that, and they might edit out this next part, but I don't care. I'm going to ask back. I hold every year, it's so much easier to accept. I don't know what's going on with Hashem's plan. Hashem has the best plan. But I think the fact that Hashem loves you is the harder thing to do. 100%. I think I'm telling you myself, I was talking to someone yesterday, went through a tragedy. We lost
So
our
can I
parents.
say why?
What?
Only because you look at your life and you say, why did Hashem do this to me? Why did Hashem do? If you look at every situation in your life, you say, Hashem brought me here. You take take a diary, write down those nisim that happened to you. Wow, you say, right?
100%.
I guarantee you look back on it, you say, Hashem was there for me, Hashem was there for me, wow.
See, someone's going through a tzara, let's assume, right? I always say the way Yid survives the tzara is knowing he doesn't understand Hashem's plan, right? I'm not on the next level that it's all min Hashemayim, it's all great. Hashem has a plan, you trust Hashem's plan, it's better than you. I think that's an easier level to accept than love. I think love is right. That the bad is coming from love is a hard thing to accept. Again, I think
It's not,
so.
you see, the bad is coming from love is wrong.
I understand.
That's the point.
The external negativity the person is feeling, I think it's easier for you to accept. You know what I'm saying? I think it's
We have to study emunah. There's a sugya here you're touching on. You're expressing something, but you got to go through the emunah.
I've gone through sugya a lot. I always find it's easier for people to accept from Hashem's plan, but bi'ahav I think is a higher level. That it's really Hashem's love. I think that's a higher level. You can hear that a second?
Let me digest it. This is the Chovos HaLevavos in Shar B'Tachon, where I get this from. I haven't found it to be true. And I'll tell you why. Because you see, that Hashem, if my life is good, I can recognize Hashem loves me. I can see that.
I agree. I'm asking. I know for sure at Givaldic. I said, "Rest of us have that down." I just think it's a little bit. It's a higher level. I think comes first. Anyway, so Dr. Lieberman, if you're sitting with a person, a young man, a young woman, doesn't matter how old they are, and they're emotionally in pain and they want to get married and they're living in the struggle now that they're not married, what advice would you give to them?
So I'd say three things. One, listen to Rabbi Epstein. Two, listen to Rabbi Shafer. And three is allow for the possibility that who your Besher is not who you think it is. meaning expand the possibility of who is good for me may not fit into this box, this rigidity, this mindset that I've already established, and just allow for the possibility that you might want to open the flaps a little bit and expand out.
And that'll hopefully lead to your bashed.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, 3 pieces of advice. I like this.
You like the first two. The second one.
I like it. That's good.
Second bit was the best, right?
Anyway, Rabbi Epstein, Rabbi Shafier, Dr. Lieberman, it was a pleasure having you. It was an amazing panel. I think that the advice that was given here is really tangible, that people should, like the Mesilas Yesharim says, watch it again and again and again, and hopefully it'll go into your heart. Thank you so much for coming.